Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Philadelphia City Council. This is the public hearing and public meeting of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 260199, 260200, 260201, 260202, 260203, 260204, 260205, 260206, 260208, 260209, and resolution number 260227. Ms. Lawhead, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Squilla. Councilmember Gautier. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Young. Councilmember Driscoll. Councilmember Lozada. Councilmember Bass. Councilmember Phillips. Councilmember O'Neill. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Harity. Councilmember Ahmad. Councilmember Landau. Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember O'Rourke. Council President Johnson.
Present. Thank you. A quorum of the committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. Ms. Lawhead, would you please read the title of the resolutions?
Bill number 260199, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2027. Bill number 260200, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal year 2027 capital budget. Bill number 260201, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2027 through 2032 inclusive. Bill number 260202, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2400 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Hotel Room Rental Tax by providing for an additional excise tax on hotel room rentals, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260203, an ordinance amending Subcode A, the Philadelphia Administrative Code of Title IV of the Philadelphia Code, the Building Construction and Occupancy Code, by adding and revising Zoning Board of Adjustment fees and provisions in regarding hearing schedules, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260204, an ordinance amending Title III of the Philadelphia Code entitled Air Management Code to modify the amounts of license and permit fees under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260205, an ordinance amending Section 19-1806 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Authorization of Realty Use and Occupancy Tax to clarify the imposition of the tax on the use of occupancy of real estate with respect to cell towers, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260206, an ordinance amending Chapter 600 of the Philadelphia Code Asbestos by adding and revising provisions related to various fees, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260280, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1800 of the Philadelphia Code entitled School Tax Authorization to add a new Section 19-1808 entitled Authorization of Rideshare Use Tax to authorize the Board of the School District of Philadelphia to levy a tax upon the use by a passenger of a transportation network company for a prearranged ride that originates in Philadelphia, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260209, an ordinance amending Title 19 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Finance, Taxes, and Collections to add a new Chapter 19-4800 entitled Retail Delivery Tax to establish a tax orders for the delivery in Philadelphia of retail, consumer, and other tangible goods, all under certain terms and conditions. Resolution number 260227, providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2027 through 2031 and incorporating revisions with respect to fiscal year 2026, which is to be submitted by the mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to an intergovernmental cooperation agreement by and between the city and the authority.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lawhead. Today we begin the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal year 2027, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal year 2027 through fiscal year 2032. Today we will hear testimony from the administration on the 5-year plan. Ms. Lawhead, will you please call the first witness to testify for the administration?
Tiffany Thurman, Chief of Staff to Mayor Parker.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning, Council President Johnson and members of City Council. My name is Tiffany Thurman, Chief of Staff to Mayor Parker. I'm honored to testify in support of the Mayor's proposed fiscal year 2027 operating budget, Bill number 260199, and the proposed fiscal year 2027 through 2031 five-year plan, Resolution 260227, along with the supporting budget and revenue bills introduced on March 12th. Joining me today are my colleagues, Chief Deputy Mayor Vanessa Garrett-Harley, and Managing Director Adam Teal, Finance Director Rob DeBoe, Budget Director Sabrina Maynard, Cabinet members, and other leaders from across the administration. The administration's $6.997 billion proposed One Philly, One Future fiscal year 27 budget and FY 27 through 31 five-year plan, including $642 million in new operating investments over 5 years and $1.5 billion over the next 6-year capital program. This proposed budget and plan builds on the progress and success of the last 2 years while dedicating new resources to urgent needs facing Philadelphians. As always, this administration remains committed to fiscal responsibility as we continue to manage through significant challenges in this uncertain federal and economic environment. These include the expiration of federal COVID relief funding, potential federal regulatory and funding changes, and high legacy and fixed costs, including debt service and pensions, with a legacy pension obligation bond balloon payment due in fiscal year 2029. In responding to these risks, the five-year plan maintains positive fund balances in each year while reestablishing the federal funding reserve, and growing the budget stabilization reserve to $344 million, its largest amount ever by the end of fiscal year 2028. Maintaining the city's strong fiscal financial foundation while continuing to deliver results for residents and businesses is not easy, and we don't do this alone. Every major initiative have moved forward successfully thanks to our growing workforce and in collaboration, of course, with members of City Council and other local, state, and federal officials, as well as civic and nonprofit groups, business and industry, organized labor, and community leaders all across our great city. With this One Philly, One Future budget, we're continuing to make real progress towards our shared future as the safest, cleanest, and greenest big city in America with access to economic opportunity for all. The core of this budget is geared towards establishing Philadelphia's economic GPS, growth, prosperity, and security. This is our overarching framework for strategic investments and economic mobility, and it ensures that our priorities will boost economic mobility for residents by growing and fostering a more inclusive economy and putting more people on the path to self-sufficiency. That is how we define economic mobility. Moving up the socioeconomic ladder is just too hard for too many Philadelphians, and we all know it. It's too hard to get the training and access to a good-paying job. It's too hard to buy a home or make rent, and it's still too hard to keep up with bills and daily expenses. And for many families, it seems impossible to build generational wealth for their children and to realize a brighter future and even greater opportunity. The city's historic stubborn poverty rate has finally dropped to under 20%, and this is noteworthy. But our work will not stop until every Philadelphian can, with hard work and of course persistence, build the quality of life that they desire and that they deserve. Realizing this vision, though, it means that we have to make big changes on multiple fronts all at the same time. That also is not easy. First, we have to grow the economy. Last year's budget helped to set the conditions for economic growth with historic tax investments that are increasing Philadelphia's competitiveness and ability to attract and grow businesses that will create quality jobs. This really matters for major industries and the businesses on our neighborhood commercial corridors. We want to see thriving, growing businesses across sectors across the city. Philadelphia Eds and Meds have long been the city's largest employers, but Philadelphia is on the cusp of a unique opportunity to win back its prior moniker as the workshop of the world by becoming a logistics, maritime, and shipbuilding powerhouse. We are laser focused on Lower South Philadelphia in particular, which is fastly becoming a global hub of advanced manufacturing and international trade. Thousands of quality jobs we're seeing are now becoming more and more accessible to city residents, and it's really within reach. We also know that growing industry and business will mean little for residents without access to quality job training, career pipelines, and other supports that can help put them on a firm financial footing. This is about forming an economic GPS that not only guides the city as a whole, but also it looks at every household, not just the businesses. And that is why the Office of Community Empowerment and Economic Opportunity, as well as the City College for Municipal Employment, will be organized under a new economic mobility cabinet under the leadership of a senior official to lead a comprehensive approach to support upward mobility for Philadelphians. This is in response to the Raj Chetty data from Harvard University. This new leadership, dedicated to prioritizing strategies with the greatest impact on economic mobility, will be instrumental to guiding the plan's $107 million in operating investments and $231 million in investments over the 6-year capital program relating to increasing economic opportunity. Regarding ending street homelessness, the next major priority area of investment for the people in our city who need the most basic of necessities, which are shelter and warmth. Unfortunately, the number of people experiencing homelessness in Philadelphia, it has increased in recent years, consistent with the trends in other parts of the country. To trigger fast-moving action by the city, Mayor Parker signed an executive order in December to launch the One Philly response to ending street homelessness. In short, this means the addition of 1,000 shelter beds, ensuring sufficient capacity for anyone needing shelter to come in. But also critically, departments are working together and with providers to broaden street outreach and provide the medical, behavioral, and social services that people experiencing homelessness need to attain a degree of stability. The Office of Homeless Services, under the leadership of Executive Director Cheryl Hill, are at the front of this effort in close collaboration, working in close collaboration with Deputy Managing Director Crystal Yates-Gale and, of course, the Managing Director's office, working with other agencies as well to establish a tightly integrated system of facilities, services, and comprehensive supports. The 5-year plan includes $22 million in FY27 to expand and sustain the 100 new shelter beds with wraparound services, increase hours at the city's Hub of Hope facility, and adding an additional encampment resolution capacity with about $110 million proposed over 5 years. Regarding the wellness ecosystem, since launching the wellness ecosystem in 2024 with a $100 million investment approved by City Council, the total number of beds has increased by more than 500, and this capacity is being used. The Riverview Wellness Village is over 90% occupied, providing more than 220 individuals with housing, medical care, recovery services, and social supports. Philly Home at Girard has reached its full capacity in January, and it's seen remarkable progress in residents accepting medical and behavioral services that can support their journey through early recovery and placement at Riverview for comprehensive inpatient treatment. The Office of Community Wellness and Recovery, under the leadership of Director Isabel McDevitt, is working really hard on a daily basis with health, social service, and public safety partners across government with external providers to streamline systems and services for better outcomes to ensure every vulnerable resident can find and continue on a pathway to recovery and stability. The proposed 5-year plan commits $211 million in operating funds for the wellness ecosystem, which includes funding for the operations at the Riverview Wellness Center and Philly Home at Girard. These major areas of investment in economic mobility and opportunity, ending street homelessness, and investing in our wellness ecosystem, they are vital. They are essential to advancing our shared vision for the city. The proposed budget and 5-year plan also allocate significant operating and capital funding across the administration's other priority pillars: public safety, clean and green, housing, education, and core support. The administration is proposing specific revenue changes to support key initiatives and services. This One Philly, One Future budget includes an increase to the hotel tax starting in FY27 that will fund the strategy to end street homelessness. While some may suggest that this might make it harder for Philadelphia to attract visitors who then patronize our local businesses and civic and cultural institutions, we have no doubt that Philadelphia will remain one of the most popular destinations, not only in the country, but around the world. A retail delivery tax will enable the deployment of a new pothole squad, crews for daily response to potholes under the leadership of Crystal Jacob Shipman and Carlton Williams, and other road improvements, a top concern we've heard from constituents and our neighborhood community action centers under the leadership of Executive Director Anton Moore. Finally, this budget also proposes new, dedicated funding that will support the School District of Philadelphia through a modification to the use and occupancy tax, expected to generate more than $2 million per year, and a local transportation network company tax that is proposed to generate an additional $48 million per year. Altogether, the proposed increases in revenue in this budget, as well as the millage shifts proposed in the first two One Philly budgets, the city will make a $1.4 billion investment in contributions from the general fund to the school district over the 5-year plan. The administration's full scope of strategies and investments are outlined in detail within the 5-year plan. Recently, our Philly Stat 360 team, they also expanded to 60 performance areas that they're now looking at, spanning from public safety, housing, sanitation, service delivery, for the public to track and monitor the results in real time. As the mayor often says, don't just simply listen to what we say, watch what we do. And you can do that by tracking our results on Philly Stat 360. We also have with us today City Solicitor Renee Garcia, Police Commissioner Kevin Bethel, Chief Public Safety Director Adam Geer, Director Carlton Williams, Chief Administrative Officer Camille Duchesset, Chief Education Officer Dr. Deb Carrera, Chief Cultural Officer Val Gay, Acting Commerce Director Karen Fegley, and other senior administration officials. We look forward to discussing this work with you all further today. On behalf of Mayor Parker, our cabinet members, our leadership, our entire team, thank you, truly thank you for your partnership as we continue to move forward as One Philly with One Future. Council President, we've also submitted written testimony for the Mayor's Office and for the Department of Labor. At this time, I'd like to call Octavia Howell to provide testimony on the recommended fiscal year 2027 capital budget and fiscal year 27 through 32 capital program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Good
Council.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing all right.
That's
Good
good.
morning, Council President Johnson and members of City Council. I'm Octavia Howell, Executive Director of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. Along with my colleagues, I am here to present for your review and consideration the recommended capital program for fiscal year 2027 to 32 and the capital budget for the fiscal year 2027. These proposals were approved by the Planning Commission on March 10, 2026. As both the capital program and budget are key instruments of the planned physical development by city agencies and institutional partners, the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter directs their initial preparation and submission to the mayor be a function of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. The Planning Commission taking action on the budget and program are required under the charter before council's consideration. The recommended FY 27 to 32 capital capital program and FY 27 capital budget represent the administration's continued commitment to making the city of Philadelphia the safest, cleanest, greenest big city in the nation with access to economic opportunity for all. The recommended program is a 6-year plan for investing in neighborhood and community facilities like parks, libraries, and recreation centers, specialized vehicles, including fire and sanitation trucks, repairs to city streets and sidewalks, maintenance of city-owned buildings, and technological infrastructure. The recommended budget reflects the spending appropriations for the first year of the 6-year program. Recommended investments in this budget and program take steps to address the city's capital needs and long-term goals, while also reflecting the city's financial resources and spending capacity. The city balances making new infrastructure investments with the city's ability to pay back the money that the city borrows to fund those investments, while still having the capacity to make necessary operating investments. The recommended capital budget and program reflects these funding choices that are both responsive to the current needs and proactive investments in the future of the city. The 6-year capital program recommends just over $1.5 billion in new city tax-supported general obligation fund bond funding to support public improvements throughout the city. This recommended program is the city's largest capital program ever. When possible, city funds are used to leverage additional resources provided by regional, state, federal, and private partners. Considering all sources of funding, including self-sustaining aviation and water funds and carry-forward appropriations from previous years, the recommended capital program proposes $22.1 billion in total improvements. In FY27, the recommended capital budget calls for nearly $281.2 million of new general obligation bond funding. The FY27 to 32 recommended capital program and budget include $131.4 million in FY27 and $837 million over the full program for Clean and Green. This funding area prioritizes street paving, ADA ramps, electrical vehicle charging stations, investments into a Guaranteed Energy Savings Act initiative that will support project at health facilities, homeless services facilities, and the Quadplex, sanitation facilities and equipment, and improvement to city parks, trails, pools, and playgrounds. These investments will improve the quality of life in Philadelphia and make all neighborhoods cleaner, greener, and more vibrant. $79.3 million in FY27 and $301.4 million over the full program for public safety. These investments include continuing to renovate the burn building at the Fire Academy, security and building improvements at the city's prison facilities, building improvements at police and fire facilities, vehicles such as fire engines and medic units, fully funding the construction of 2 new health centers, and Vision Zero infrastructure to improve traffic safety on the city streets. These recommended investments will increase the safety of Philadelphia's neighborhoods, residents, and uniformed public servants. $30.4 million in FY27 and $142.7 million over the full program for core support. Recommended capital investments for core support include information technology upgrades to optimize and streamline the city's financial and procurement systems, upgrading the database for the city's preliminary arrangement system, building and life safety improvements to the city's facilities, improvements to city-owned vehicle fuel sites, and funding to construct a factory to produce modular housing to accelerate the production of homes and create sustainable jobs. $40.1 million in FY27 and $230.7 million over the program for economic opportunity. To expand access to economic opportunity for all, the Planning Commission recommends capital investments in neighborhood commercial corridors throughout the city, critical repairs and maintenance of local public transit infrastructure, which is unlocking state and federal matching funds, and investments in cultural institutions such as the African American Museum, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Dell Music Center, the Mann Music Center, and the Please Touch Museum. We are pleased to propose these investments, but I must emphasize that while this is the largest capital program in the city's history, the proposed investments cannot fully meet the documented need for capital investments in the city, in its facilities. This recommendation seeks to balance the fiscal constraints of the city's relatively weak tax base with its immense infrastructure needs. Increasing the city's borrowing means increasing the debt service and fixed costs, reducing the city's budgetary flexibility. Overall, given our financial constraints, the recommended capital program and budget invest in the city's infrastructure to the greatest extent possible. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your testimony. Just have a couple questions before I turn it over to members of City Council to start this process. Throughout this proposal, we see a series of new and increased taxes and fees. So before we ask residents, visitors, small businesses, and working families to pay more, we need to be absolutely sure that city government has done everything possible to tighten our own belt. Can you walk this body through the serious concrete options you evaluate on the savings side?
On the safety side?
Savings side.
Oh, the savings side, got it.
Yes.
Good morning. I'm Sabrina Maynard, Budget Director. So as part of this budget, we actually had departments go through and propose 1% and 2% cuts. And we've reviewed that as part of the process. And some departments actually did make adjustments. So you'll see we made some adjustments in the managing director's office for some vacancies we weren't filling. We did the same thing in DHS. We made a small adjustment in the treasurer's office. So kind of across the board, there are a number of items that we looked at because we did, to your point, we want to make sure that we're looking at our own house before we make the really tough decision to raise new revenues.
Is there a dollar amount on those savings across the board?
We can pull that
That you can
together for you.
calculate?
Yeah, we can get that to you. Yep.
All right, please provide that information to the chair. And also have the administration identify any programs or contracts that are underperforming relative to their stated goals, where funds could be reduced or repurposed.
Yeah, so the cuts in the budget includes $50,000 reduction in professional services in the treasurer's office, as Budget Director Sabrina Maynard mentioned, $250,000 reduction in economic stimulus, but we held harmless, jumpstart, and taking care of business, $9.4 million in recurring overtime with police, which was major, $300,000 recurring reduction for unfilled vacancies under DHS, a $500,000 reduction in unfilled operational command center vacancies under MDO, which was also just referenced, $150,000 reduction under CAO. We did see a slight $200,000 reduction in marketing to contracts under OHR, which is what some of the Class 200 funding, $50,000 reduction in professional development under OPS, $7 million in operating support for planned opening for health centers that have been delayed. Those are now fully funded on the capital side and fully funded on the operating side in the out years, which is in alignment with the planned opening dates. A $500,000 reduction in rent contingency under the Department of Public Property, and an $830,000 reduction in CAM payments under DPP in anticipation of acquisition of 400 North Broad Street later this calendar year. So that, we have other smaller reductions as well, but in terms of big items, that's where we see the most reductions. Because it was important, as the director said, we have to make sure that our house is in order first. We have to ensure that we are fiscally responsible first before we turn our attention elsewhere. It was a painstaking, difficult process. A lot of people behind me that weren't too happy, but they understood.
Yes, thank you very much. During last year's budget process, there was a lot of unknown about whether grants the city received will be canceled under the current federal administration. So could you give us a status update on how many federal grants have been lost due to the current federal administration?
Yeah, so we looked at this yesterday because it changes all the time. And what we've seen really over the last year is pausing and unpausing, terminating and unterminating. We've got, I would say, about 5 at this point that are kind of terminated with fairly minimal impact financially. There are a couple of reimbursements we're waiting for, and we're working through the administrative process with the federal government for that. And then the big one is the Chinatown Stitch, which I know we've talked about quite a bit, but there was some good news this week, some increased funding for the Chinatown Stitch from another source. So it remains a dynamic situation, but all told, we've been really fortunate.
Do we have a federal intergovernmental team that's lobbying and working with our federal administration, with the federal administration and our congressional representatives to make sure we're a priority in terms of still advocating for budget requests on the federal level?
Yes, so we've always historically had an Office of Legislative Affairs in the mayor's office. We now, as of yesterday, now have a new Office of Intergovernmental Affairs as well. And so what that means is, under the leadership of Edward Edney, who serves as our senior director of Intergov Affairs, he will now receive 3 additional positions under him that are currently vacant. So these aren't new positions that we're asking for in the budget. And they will continue to help support and uplift the work work that we're doing on the federal side. So we had a recruitment fair that we attended, that we held rather in DC, I think last year or the year before last. We were able to recruit that individual who has extensive experience working on the Hill, and it has really helped us to navigate, all of the regulatory changes that are happening at the federal level. So that new office within the department just means additional support and also more coordinated and direct attention working with our existing federal lobbyists.
Have we stress tested a 5-year plan to look at any event that over the 3 years that said individual is still in office in Washington, D.C., and there could be an impact of a lack of funding, specifically have an impact on our 5-year plan? Have we stress tested and kind of look at over the 5-year plan if things would change in the event that federal funding is impacted?
Yes, so every year, right before Thanksgiving, Sabrina Maynard goes to the folks behind me and asks them to go
She goes
through-
where?
She goes to the folks behind me, the leaders that are sitting in chambers today, and she asks them to go through an extensive exercise of putting together cut scenarios at 1%, 2%, and sometimes 3 and 5%. And those cut scenarios are based on regulatory changes that could happen at the federal level, but also regulatory changes and cuts that can happen at the state level as well, and also impacts that could happen with our budget here, our local general fund. And so through that painstaking process, we do have, cut scenario planning, and we are prepared if some grants were to end. Unfortunately, we can't backfill many of those grants, and then that's where Rob DeBoe will come in. So Rob DeBoe, I'll turn it over to him to talk more about that cut scenario process and where we currently stand.
Yeah, and a couple other things we do. We have the federal funding reserve that we're asking to reestablish, and as Tiffany said, we're going to have the largest rainy day fund that we've ever had at $344 million. And she talked about the cut process. So all of those will help and give us time to plan if there are, what you're talking about, like the doomsday scenario. But we can't step in for the federal government. We can't make up for, in 25, we got $2.2 billion in grants. We don't have the capability to do that. So what we can give ourselves is time to react and to, minimize the damage.
I want to go into another area around food insecurity. Is there any levels of investment for us to address the issue of food insecurity and also the criteria changes that are coming from the federal government, where there's a possibility that if the population individuals that we serve that qualify for SNAP, if they don't make the criteria, then they will be subject to be eliminated from receiving SNAP benefits, and just wanted to see the administration's strategy around it. I know we have done some work with the administration with my food insecurity task force, but want to get an idea in terms of this particular budget, what that looks like in terms of moving forward, helping those who may be in need of food security.
So, good morning, Council President and others.
Good morning.
I'm Vanessa Garrett Harley, Chief Deputy Mayor. As you know, we did some extensive work both with you and other city council members, as well as our private and philanthropic communities, when the SNAP benefits were jeopardized and a number of folks were cut off, albeit temporarily, thankfully, before. We continue to do that work around trying to prepare, because we don't know what the difference may be. For some of our folks may not be eligible under the new guidelines that are coming into effect. We work with our Office of CEO as well as the Food Insecurity. We have a department that kind of comes under me that does that work from the OCF level, and we continue to look and work with our partners at the various food banks, be they Philabundance, Share, and all the other ones, right? So that we are prepared in the event that this happens again. Now, part of the work that we're undertaking now is around education, making sure that people know about the potential changes and what it is that they have to do in order to maintain those eligibility criteria, because we want to minimize the number of folks who would be impacted all the way around. CEO has been doing a Herculean job, door to door and everything else, trying to make sure that people know this information and that we can help them. Some of it is around you have to meet a certain number of hours of either work or volunteerism. We're also working with some folks trying to make sure that we can give people the opportunities, because there are people who are saying, I'm willing to do it, but you got to help me find a place to do it at. So a lot of it is around that educational work. We've also been trying to seek funding where we can. I know we just got a grant in for about $25,000 that will allow us to expand some of the food work that we do. We administer those programs in terms of getting money out the door very quickly, using our public health department, because certainly this would be a health crisis if, in fact, our folks are not able to eat. So we continue to administer those community-based grants on the ground and continue to monitor the situation very closely, both at the federal level.
Is there going to be a budget investment regarding food insecurity and security in this particular budget? Is there a dollar amount that specifically targets
I
this
can actually
area?
get you the dollar amount. We'll bring that back to you. There is some investments on our Office of Children and Family side. We definitely put in some money towards our community schools, have various kind of food pantries and other things. There are dollar amounts that we carry on the regular with some of our funders, be that Philabundance and others, but I will get you the total dollar amount. We can prepare it for you.
Okay. All right, I'm probably going to be looking for, as we go through this budget process, like specific targeting to support those organizations that are on the front line day in and day out. And I know we did a lot of collaboration and
Yes.
doing when there was a proposal from the administration,
Yeah, so
from Washington to cut back on supporting SNAP benefits.
Yes, and through the mayor's office, the mayor's business roundtable under Donovan West's leadership, we have a number of roundtables. One of those roundtables include the nonprofit roundtable, and it's led by Lori Jones, who of course leads. It's co-led by Lori Jones, but she, of course, she's the executive director of Philabundance. We are in direct contact with both her and other leaders that are leading in this space around food insecurity, and so I would say, and this is a bold statement, we have our finger on the pulse by way of the experts within our administration, but also the experts that come to the table regularly through our Mayor's Business Roundtable nonprofit task force to understand the current state of Philadelphia, and also to understand that we do not have the means to backstop or backfill or to take the place of SNAP if there were cuts. We can make one-time investments, which we did. We responded to the demand, but we also were able to use those nonprofit roundtables and the business roundtables as well, that broader community, to call on the philanthropic community to make investments. And they made historic investments during that time as well. So we do have a framework in place, and also through shuttle diplomacy, work that we're doing behind the scenes with Senator McCormick and other Pennsylvania congressional leaders at the federal level. I found that that has been also very, very helpful for our city, for how we've been positioned and how we're also, ready should any cuts come. So we are not sleeping at the wheel by any means. And as Chief Deputy Mayor said, we'll certainly give you the actual number on what that investment looks like. So we will follow up in writing.
Thank you. And I had the same conversation with Governor Shapiro as well. I know there's no way possible that we can backfill the funding cuts that will come down from Washington, D.C. when it comes to SNAP, but also his multi-billion-dollar reserve and surplus in Harrisburg, as well as our $7 billion plus budget here, also could still give us an opportunity that we may not be able to backfill everything. That's probably unreasonable, but a concrete commitment, right, separate from the philanthropic community, where we know for a fact those boots on the ground organizations like we supported the last time around would know that there's some level of help that they can depend on year after year from the city of Philadelphia. Is just something I think should be great for us to explore when it comes to addressing the issue of poverty in the city of Philadelphia. And so I know my task force team works very closely with Vanessa, and so we'll continue having that dialogue, but also how we can, when you talk about workforce development, that I also see in here, how are we utilizing our programs, opportunities for individuals to volunteer with the city, to meet the criteria so they can stay on SNAP. So that will put us in a position where as many people as possible will qualify, and then we won't get in a position where individuals won't be terminated and need the type of support from the city from a budgetary standpoint. But we do have a lot of mom and pop, and I've had this conversation where Rob been supportive in the past around supporting the mom and pop boots on the ground, I would like to call them, programs. And Philabundance is great, that's in my district. Share is great as well. They both co-chair my task forces. There's But there's a variety of different other organizations, mom and pop organizations that are out there doing this work on a day-to-day basis that also want to have a seat at the table. But not just have a seat at the table, but also opportunity to have some additional investments
Yes.
in them without having to be associated with Philabundance and or share, because they would like to do their own thing and will have a track record of doing those things. And so we'll have a longer conversation, but when we talk about poverty, that's just one of the things that I know we were doing a great job of and making sure from an investment standpoint, that's something that we can take a look at. I want to go into labor agreements. Our workforce is the backbone of city services, and everyone knows that. And so this $615 million historical, unprecedented labor reserve that we're focusing on right now, give me an idea of how we came up with the assumptions about wage growth, benefits, the arbitration outcomes, and the settlements for our current outstanding contracts.
Yeah, so as you know, we're kind of towards the end of the process that we had for contracts that were expiring as the administration came in. That combination of contracts so far has cost about $550 million. So in setting up a new reserve, we wanted to make sure that it was larger than that by some percent. So we just kind of looked at that, increased the amount, and put that as our reserve.
Good. And what's our current status right now of labor contracts? Just give us an overview, just where we're at, and which ones are still outstanding, just for members of council.
Yep. So we have either awards or agreements in place with the FOP, District Council 33, District Council 47, the unions at the FJD. We are still in the arbitration process with Local 22 representing the firefighters. We're also in the process with 159B, which is correctional officers, and Register of Wills and Sheriffs.
Okay. Go on the record just acknowledging the work that we all have done working together to reach a 60-year historical low when it comes to homicides and shootings, and we know that it's been a long road to get to this moment, and so I do want to acknowledge Adam Gare, Office of Public Safety, and our Police Commissioner, Kevin Bethel, for their hard work and their dedication. There's a $25 million investment to focus on what we all like to call boots on the ground organizations, and I applaud the administration for continually doubling down those efforts to make sure the organizations were out there working day in and day out so young people don't pick up guns in the first place, and they have opportunities to get involved in things that are positive as opposed to things that are negative. I think this is a significant investment. And also focusing on not just 1 year funding, but multi-year funding to allow these organizations to really have a chance to really do the work and not worry about where the next set of funding is going to go. So I just wanted to state that for the record, as well as my colleague, Councilman Curtis Jones, Jr., Blueprint for a Safer Philadelphia, for contributing to this process, and also Councilman Jamie Gaultier, who worked with a group of members of City Council during the previous administration to kind of work towards setting a tone of how we continuously investing on those organizations. So I just wanted to state that for the record. Can we give a real brief update around where we're at with the home initiative? Making sure we're on a path to build and reserve 30,000 units of housing here in the city of Philadelphia. And so,
Yes, sir. I'd like to call up Angela Brooks, who is overseeing the home initiative.
And as I'm just coming up, just want to say that should be receiving the proceeds of the bond issue later this week.
Thank you very much, sir.
As Angela comes up, the proposed 5-year plan includes two $400 million home borrowings, part of a larger long-term commitment, thanks to the support of council under the leadership of Mayor Parker and her vision, along with $151 million in new housing investments, which include land bank support, a proactive rental inspection program, and strategies to increase supply through modular housing production, which we're really excited about. Upcoming home initiative supported programs include One Philly Mortgage, Curbside Appeal Program, Facade Improvement Program, which Angela Brooks will speak more to.
Thank you, Chief Thurman, and good morning, Council.
Good morning.
We are excited that the home borrowing is in process, and we will be moving forward very quickly. We have been really actively working on the program expansion for the new programs, as Chief Thurman outlined. We will be launching in the near future. We're very excited to be moving forward with our facade improvement program, our curbside appeal program, One Philly Mortgage, which will start having meetings with district council members very soon, well, all council members very soon, and partnering with banks. So we are working with legal now to finalize all of those documents. Improvements to the website, as the mayor often talks about our One Front Door website, we are building that out to put all the new programs on there, and we'll be having meetings with each of you soon about the new program rollout and all of those activations.
And give me an overview or update on the basic systems repair program. How are we addressing the waiting list and really getting down to helping those most in need based upon the urgency that was put forth the last time we were here?
Absolutely, and for that, I'm going to bring up the expert, the CEO of PHDC, Dave Thomas, who is also present.
Good morning, Dave. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, Council. David Thomas, President and CEO for PHDC. I believe the question was about the backlog, correct?
Yeah, just give us up there where we're at, basic systems repair, how are we addressing the waiting list,
Yep.
the backlog,
Yep.
spending down as we move into the next phase of the funding through the borrowing.
Sure. We've over the last several months, we've certainly worked hard to bring down that wait list. Doesn't mean that we don't have a wait list, because we've also had a great deal of interest over the last several months as well. So we're, just to give you context, I think I had about 1,200 expressions of interest through the month of March to date.
Is expression of interest different than individuals who are accepted into the program, but we just didn't get to them yet? Is that totally different than expression of interest?
So expression of interest is just people, if you will, reaching out, saying that they have an issue or need. Then we're taking that expression and looking to see whether or not the person's need meets the eligibility of the program as well as their income. So we haven't determined their eligibility as of yet. But that's just 1,200 for this month.
And how many is on the actual waiting list where people have been accepted, but we just have to get to them?
Let's see.
Go ahead, bro. That's what I'm talking about. Pop it right up.
So I have approximately a little over 5,000 on BSRP right now, and that's including the people that I just told you that expressed interest.
Let's go back. 5,000 total, or 5,000 who have been accepted, we haven't got to them yet, and 1,200 who have expressions of interest, but we're still evaluating if they should come in the program.
So I'm still looking at expressions of interest, and I'll get to the eligibilities. So right now, we still have about 5,000 expressions of interest. We're going through about 1,000 a month, if you will. And we're probably going to ramp that up as of April 1st, since the bond money will be made available. We'll probably be doing group sessions, having people coming in droves. I don't do that in the winter because of, obviously, illness and pandemic and all that kind of stuff. So we try to maintain people's health and security. So I do anticipate a big push. With that money that's coming in, I can tell you that our spend rate has also increased because I have many more contractors lined up, and we're just moving that much faster. The challenge that we will have, though, just so everybody's clear, supply and demand, which we can't control. This is something that we're going to be affected by as well with this situation that's happening nationwide. The costs are also going to increase dramatically because of supply. So we're just managing it as best we can. I meet with contractors probably I'll just say every quarter, but it might be more frequent because I get phone calls more frequently. So I anticipate that our spend rate will probably be somewhere about 1.3 per week.
Mm-hmm. give us an idea of, as you increase your capacity to meet the need of the demand of individuals who want to participate in the basic systems repair program in terms of the hiring of contractors, what does that look like in terms of expanding to make sure we're just aggressively addressing the issue to meet the demand?
So I have an open rolling application throughout the year. So I don't do a prescribed RFP at a particular time of year because I know that the need is year round. So we actually receive applications weekly. We've slowed down some of those applications because we need to vet some of the folks that we're getting. Also, a lot of the folks that are expressing interest in being a contractor don't necessarily have the capacity to manage the workload, but we are going to try to work with some of those contractors to see whether or not we can bring them in slowly because the demand is still great, and I see an opportunity for people to possibly expand their business.
And I know we have changed from addressing the language of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've worked with you on this in the past in terms of making sure we have diverse contractors at the table. How are we continuing making sure that local small businesses have an opportunity to participate with this expansion of the basic systems repair? And I know if demand is higher, you need more individuals to fill the capacity to do the work. So what does that look like?
So even with our recruitment prior to the change in DEI, we've always just focused on small businesses in Philadelphia, and that has not changed. In particular, I believe my ratio today is somewhere around 58%. Small businesses, MBWB, however you want to describe them, and we continue to grow that. As a matter of fact, I met with 3 just this week that are expressing interest in getting in one of the programs that we have, if not many of the programs. Okay. And we'll continue to bring them in.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to turn over to my members. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the work the administration did and my colleague, Councilman Mike Driscoll's district when we had the catastrophe and the fatality of the plane crash. I want to acknowledge Fire Commissioner Jeffrey Thompson and his team for their hard work and their dedication and being on the front line. We know there have been some major fires taking place in the city, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the Fire Commissioner and his team for being on the front line. With that being said, I'm going to start with Councilmember Curtis Jones.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and welcome back. I've been in budget processes now for the last 19 years. And each year, this is an internal secret, I guess, I pick a department that might be not performing as well and give it to them. And so everybody else then knows that I have the capacity to give it to them. And you are making it difficult this year because you're doing such a good job that I don't know who to pick on. And that's hard work. So I went back to my last year questions, and I'm going to kind of rehash some of them. One of them was under capital budget. We are looking at, in my district, you got the 59th Street Bridge, you got the East Falls Bridge, you got a number of bridges that need to be done. But I remember in Member Gutierrez's district, the 41st Street Bridge, I think it was, took 10 years to do. And what I want to know is, have we improved upon the timing and capacity of being able to deliver on these capital projects? That's question number one. And so I'm going to put it on the record because he's got the clock out. The second question I would have is, post-pandemic, we went through a horrible purging of businesses on commercial corridors, from Point Breeze to Chestnut Hill and all in between. And I wanted to know where we were on filling those vacancies since then. Those small businesses create neighborhood jobs, tax revenues, and they help pay the bills. So the second question I would have for the team is how are we proceeding in the commerce development of small businesses on commercial corridors? Because it's my opinion that a commercial corridor reflects the consumer needs of a neighborhood. And so if you have a happy corridor, you have a happy neighborhood. So that's question number 2. And then finally, what I would say is thank you, Mr. DeBoe, for having the largest surplus since I've been here and in the city's history. I say that because I actually believe I saw you smile this morning. So those are my questions.
So for the first question around the capital budget and what our priorities are, I'd like to call up Aparna Palantino, who is the head of our capital programs office. As Aparna comes up, just so we all know, at the beginning of the administration, we decided to look differently at our approach to capital projects, and we created the Capital Projects Office. And that's based on what we've seen work in previous years, even when Mayor Parker was serving as a staffer here many years ago under the leadership of then Councilmember Marian Tasco. Since the reformation of that program, or that office rather, we have seen projects end quicker and more efficiently. And so now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Director Palantino, to talk more about her office and then the speed to which we are able to build bridges and complete capital projects in a more timely fashion.
Before we give context, Mr. President, we in this chamber saw a sheet, a process sheet at one point that had over 200 steps in order to do a capital project. So with that.
Good morning, Council President, members of City Council. My name is Aparna Palantino, Deputy Managing Director overseeing the Capital Program Office. While we have made significant strides in accelerating capital projects across the board, we finished 82 projects this year. Our office valued at about $350 million. So thank you for your support of the capital budget in years past and this year coming. We have currently in the pipeline $650 million worth of work. The bridges specifically, I will have to defer to my colleague, Deputy Managing Director Mike Carroll.
Good morning, Council Member. Thank you for the question. Just at a high level, we always try to do the best we can to get these bridge projects moving. Some of the bridges that you cited were especially challenging because they're over rail systems, over Amtrak, SEPTA. We have had a chance to get a grant from the federal government. It's kind of a research planning grant that we received a few years back. Try and get you an update on the status of that. But the purpose of it was to see if we could streamline the process of working with these railroad companies so that we could get access to the infrastructure in a more direct, timely way. You have to understand that these are active corridors that carry passengers not just through the region, but also up and down the Northeast corridor between DC and Boston. So getting the opportunity to get on the track to do these projects is very tricky. And that's a big factor in why some of those projects that you're naming take so long. Some of the bridges that you're talking about now, though, I think we're a little bit more comfortable about, especially East Falls. Our ability to get to that bridge and do the work we need to do is going to be a lot easier. The Falls Bridge should start after the festivities wrap up around FIFA and the 250th, and we figure that bridge is probably about maybe a 2.5-year project to get to completion for the work that absolutely needs to get done. There are some improvements that we've had scheduled to improve the aesthetics on that bridge, a lot of the paint that needed to be done, some cleanup, addressing some of the more obvious issues with the status of the decay and things that kind of alarm people but aren't necessarily structural for pedestrians and light vehicles. But in general, we think that project should be done, before 2 or 3 years are over. You mentioned the 59th Street Bridge. I think that one might be a little bit trickier for some of the reasons that I'm naming. We expect that project will start, though, and I'm pretty sure that construction is going to go forward in FY26, And, we'll keep you up to date as best we can as we proceed, and especially if we do make some progress working with our other partners, Amtrak, SEPTA, and so forth.
So the next question is around commercial corridors, and I'll call on Karen Fegley and her team to talk about the investments that we're making and the work that we're doing with commercial corridors since the end of the pandemic.
Good morning. Karen Fegley.
Good morning.
Acting Commerce Director. Thanks, Councilman Jones, for asking about commercial corridors and your commitment over the years. And I know it comes from your experience and your knowledge on what it takes to keep our corridors strong and our small businesses supported. Our commercial corridor strategy remains to threefold process of supporting the capacity in the communities, right? Supporting the CDCs and the bids, ensuring there's, boots on the ground out there really working with the businesses and working with the environment to make it a nice place to be and connecting to the community. The other leg of the stool is the physical environment. So our TCB, Clean Corridors program, streetscape improvements, just making the area safe and clean and attractive. And then the third piece is about supporting the businesses themselves, right? Supporting entrepreneurs to be able to start businesses, supporting the businesses that are there to access technical assistance and resources. And that's the part, excuse me, with council's support of the investments that were folded up into the Jumpstart Small Businesses, that we've really been able to make significant increased investments over the past year to reach more businesses. So things like the Catalyst Fund, our storefront improvement program, doing targeted storefront improvements, increasing the number of in-stores we can do to attract new businesses to corridors. We've also created a new form. I'm sorry, I can't think of the right, but we have a way of intaking when we meet a business who's looking for a space. We blast that out to all of our corridor contacts, because sometimes these properties aren't always listed with brokers. You know what I mean? It's like the guy down the street that's been sitting on that storefront for a while, and it takes somebody to know them to make that connection. So we're trying to boost that up. And we also, around that, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I'm going to say this. We are getting ready to roll out like sort of a new marketing initiative, because what we found is we have all these resources and we don't package them up and market them and sort of let folks know how to access them easier. So that's going to be coming soon. I have one more thing. Oh, go ahead.
Let me stop.
Yeah, we're
because
about to
he's
wrap.
going
That's
long.
like the third bell.
Yeah, with the bell rang. All I needed to know was the vacancy rates, because I know you're doing a good job.
Okay.
And I see the work that you do in my district. I just wanted to know, from the pandemic to the uprising during the George Floyd to now, have we covered that? I don't know about Point Breeze or other areas. Could you give the president kind of a breakdown of what our vacancy rates are?
Vacancy rates are still, before the pandemic, they were averaged around 20%. There's a big change depending on the corridors we're talking about. So they went up a little bit, I would say, on an average. The last thing I was going to tell you is we are in the process of doing a citywide vacancy count. Right now, we get it from the folks we contract with as part of their contract, but we're actually going to do a vacancy count on every corridor to make sure we are measuring our impact, on a going basis. We work with the Planning Commission on that.
What's the time frame? That's an excellent line of questioning.
That's a good question. We just entered into the contract, and I believe it's a 6-month contract, so we should have our numbers by the fall.
And for the record, who's the company doing the actual counting?
Our contract is with eConsult, and then they have a subcontractor.
Okay.
It's Akeem Dixon. I can't remember his company
All right.
name.
Okay. Thank you very much, Karen Fegley. Chair recognizes Majority Leader Catherine Gilmore Richardson, then next, Minority Leader Kendra Brooks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you all so much for your testimony. I, too, will start with my thank yous this year. My team and I go through and check all the work that we've done and who we've worked with, and I wanted to start with a thank you. First, in her absence, thank you to Sincere Harris. for all of her work and dedication to this administration. Of course, to Rachel and Andre, who work with us on a daily basis here in council chambers, and also have to shout out Robin Torrance for her D9 collaboration and the work that we've done together, and we'll do this again tomorrow, but also Robin, Sabrina, and Jackie Dunn, Matthew Bowman, Shakina Clark, for all of your work that you've done, not only with my office, but me serving as chair of Council's Committee on Finance. I wanted to start with the Budget Stabilization Reserve. You talked about the BSR in your testimony, and obviously that's work that I remain very proud of because it's one of the first bills that I passed in the last term. And so I wanted to talk about the ongoing commitment to growing the fund year over year, and it's obviously one of our biggest accomplishments now, Rob, that since FY24 we've saved $178 million, and we're on track to be at around $350 million by FY28. We know that we've consistently struggled there, but I think that's wonderful progress. So if you could just walk us through, for the record, the estimated contributions to the BSR throughout the 5-year plan, and on average, how much interest is the BSR earning each year, and what are we projecting to earn across the 5-year plan? I'll start there, and then I just have a couple more, so just quick if you can.
Sure. Yep. In FY25, the contribution was $58.3 million. In FY26, $58.9 million. For FY27, it'll be $52.5 million, and then we are estimating that in FY28 it will be $53.9 million, and that will bring the balance up to about $344 million. That doesn't include the interest earnings. Interest earnings will probably be another 10 to 15 million, so we'll probably be in the 350s.
Excellent. And so for the record, if you could just speak to what conditions must be met in order to use the rainy day fund.
Yeah, so there are conditions that are set out now in the charter, and I won't have all of them in the head, but there are things like a decline in revenue beyond a certain percent, some unanticipated emergency on the expenditure side. So it's got to be something really dramatic to trigger it.
Sure, I just wanted to get that on the record. I also was looking through the FY27 budget briefing deck, and on slide 10, it shows that the city's fund balance and reserves across the 5-year plan and what that spread looks like. But on that particular slide, I noticed that you all are now counting fund balance, BSR, federal funding reserve, as the total reserve, and using that number as the sort of reserve percentage, which you know is important to the GFOA recommendations. So if you could just talk us through, why you have presented the data in that way, and you know that I do understand, funds that are in reserve and the specific conditions, as you stated, that must be met. But if you could just walk us through why you're adding all of those reserves together.
Yeah, and we have been doing it that way for a couple of years, and it's probably more noticeable now because the BSRF is getting larger,
right.
So it stands out more. And we did that because we wanted to look at where all of our reserves were and all of the resources we'd have in the extent that something really bad happened, like revenue started to decline rapidly. So we wanted to show that picture, and that's how we got there.
And I only ask because I don't know, is this something that GFOA recommends as far as an accounting practice to calculate all the reserves, even if a portion of those reserves are restricted as it relates to their recommended goal and then what we know to be true about our reserves?
Yeah, they talk about reserves, so it's not really specific in that way.
I receive it.
And,
okay.
Yeah.
Potato.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying, Rob. Okay. Okay. I also have a few questions very quickly on locally generated non-tax revenue. Since FY19, our locally generated non-tax revenue actuals, and this is from the AFR, for FY19, 351.4 million, FY20, 367.9, FY21, 345.5, FY22, 407.3, FY23, 410.6, FY24, 462.8, and FY25, 466 million. So for FY26, we budgeted 410 million, is that correct?
For FY26, I actually have the estimate. I don't have the initial budget. But the estimate now for locally generated non-taxes.
Can you give me actual and then budgeted?
I can give you the actual for 25 and the estimate for 26.
Okay.
So the actual for 25 was 466.5. The estimate now for 26 is 473.3.
Okay. And so, right, that's what I have. And so for FY27, we are projecting a 16.6% reduction in our locally generated non-tax revenue, but that would be despite an increase in fees. We are also projecting reductions in this particular revenue stream across the 5-year plan, going as low as $378 million in FY28. Which will be the lowest it's been since FY21, which is like at the peak of COVID. So while you're increasing fees, we're still projecting a decrease in the locally generated non-tax revenue?
Yeah, there are two things, two big reasons. One, in FY26, we're assuming an asset sale, the medical examiner's, old medical examiner's office. That's about $23 million. We're also assuming that as our fund balance comes down, our interest earnings go down. So you'll see that the interest earnings projection goes down from 26 to 27, from about 73.3 to about 36.7, and then it keeps going down as our fund balance goes down.
Okay, and so if you could just walk me back then, let's go back pre-COVID, like FY19, budgeted versus actuals for LG&T.
Yeah.
Has it been?
Yes, we'll get back to you on
that.
the average. I don't have that all with me, but we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Before I call on Member Brooks, I just had a question I want to ask of Ms. Deb Carrera regarding could you join me at the podium, please? Just a brief question. And state your name and your title for the record.
Good morning, Dr. Deborah Carrera, the Chief Education Officer.
Good morning. Just a real brief question. I know we're going, the original proposal was for the 20-cent tax on all Uber drives. And now we have a amendment for 80 cents to make it $1. Just want to get an idea of when you sat down with Dr. Wallins and his team, did they not know that there was a $48 million deficit during their first presentation to the administration before the actual determination that there would be cuts and layoffs and he would be 48 million? Actually, it's 50 million. Folks may or may not know it's really 50 million, but the dollar brings it to 48 million as close as we can. But I just want to get an idea about that process. And then was there a conversation with the district when Dr. Wallington gave us a proposal? We'll have a chance to ask him when he do come in front of us, but you're Chief Education Officer. I decided to ask you, how did they tighten up their belts, first and foremost, and take a look at, okay, before we make these cuts, proposed cuts and layoffs of teachers and so forth, and principals, from my understanding, how they're actually doing business, right, before they decided to come and say, we need to make these layoffs, and then we have a proposal, let me put it that way, saying here's how we can stop these layoffs and cuts from happening. I just want to get an idea.
Council President, if you don't mind, I might be able to start off that conversation.
Sure. It's in your portfolio?
Yes, this is in
Okay.
my portfolio,
All right. Thank
Mayor's
you.
Office of Education.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
Vanessa Garrett Harley, Chief Deputy Mayor. To begin with, we knew that we all know that the Philadelphia public school system has been historically underfunded, and this year didn't change that, right? And we knew that we needed more money in education, which is part of the reason that the 20-cent proposal was made for what some are calling the rideshare tax at the time, was 20 cents, was an effort to bring additional funding to that school district. Now, when we looked at that, the 20 cent would have got us approximately 9.6 million
That's the
over in a
original
1 year.
proposal,
The
yes.
original proposal for the 20%. However, at that time, there was a follow-up conversation that was held with the school district, and that's when they outlined for us what their deficit was going to be looking at, and the fact that they would have to do some deep cuts for the FY 27, the school year that would start, I guess, September technically, right? They had been reliant on funding that came in, some of the funds that came in through after the COVID times and others, where they put in a number of positions that included things like vice principals and counselors and other things, right? When they started facing somewhere close to that 300 million was how they defined it to us, the deficit that they were going to face, then we knew that 9.6, while nice, was not going to be enough. And so that's when the decision was made to go back to the drawing board and see what else we could get them. By putting in the additional 80-cent tax, we're able to raise it, if you raise that tax to $1,
48 million.
it would allow us to get
I'm
48
familiar with
million
the
per year,
details.
which is a big difference than the 9.6, and would be a tremendous help to the school district, and that funding would go to the school district. Now, the cuts would have a significant impact on the sort of academics and just the whole educational experience that our young people would face if they were forced to have to make these deep cuts to positions and other things in the budgets. It could have a very devastating impact. And certainly, we don't want to walk backwards. We see the gains that the school district has been making. They're increasing in graduation rates and all of that stuff, right? And we don't want to lose that by having to cut positions and folks who would be there to help.
I understand. I just was trying to understand the process,
Yes.
right? So if he came with a detailed budget proposal to the administration, I was trying to connect the dots on where did he not have an upfront conversation or miss the fact that he would have a significant impact just hear me out.
Okay.
Just trying to understand. That's all. Because you said it yourself. There was a conversation at first where obviously this information wasn't there, because if the information was there, there would be no need to come back with an amendment if there wasn't new information, correct?
I'm not saying that the information was necessarily there at first. I'm saying that we knew that the school district has always been underfunded. So the 20 cent was an effort to try to get them
Yes,
additional
I
funds.
agree with that.
But right after the mayor's budget address and others was when the conversation was really had.
That's all. That's
and it
all I was
laid
trying to
out.
get. So it wasn't an early conversation early on where it could have just been a proposal for $1 from the beginning, as opposed to 20 cent and then coming back and wanting to do more.
But there was a pre-scheduled meeting that occurred the evening after the budget address. So the budget address occurred Thursday morning. That evening, we learned that the deficit was actually much bigger than what was originally reported. And as a result, we said, hey, we're going to go back to the well. We're going to see what we can do. We're going to exhaust every resource that we think is possible.
Yes.
We're going to bring forth something for, of course, for council to react to.
Yes.
And then collectively, we want to then say, Harrisburg, we've done our part and then some. Now we want you to step up and do your part to close the funding gap.
I just wanted to get some clarity on that.
Yes,
That's
sir.
all. And then the other part was, I guess, conversations with the district, and we'll have a longer conversation with the district when they do come in front of us. Like, what have they actually done as an institution? Like, yeah, we always do our part. Since I first came to council, we've done our part. I think when I first arrived as a freshman, it was Curtis Jones who led the effort with Keona Sanchez around some type of tax at that point in time. And then when I was a state legislative in Harrisburg, I also led the effort to make sure Nutter was able to come inside the room and work with other legislators with Tumar as well to make sure that we also did a tax as well to support the schools. So that wasn't really the issue. It was more sort of process. And I was just trying to get an understanding, but also making sure that the district is tightening up their belt. And so the return on investment that we give for our children, but particularly also making sure they are the ones actually receiving the level of support they need when it comes to academic achievement, and that should be reflected in how they actually tighten up their belt and how they're actually spending their dollars and cents. And so it was just a general question, but I asked Ms. Deborah Carrera, as being the Chief Education Officer, I know y'all all work together with the school district and the school board to kind of make sure that this proposal is put forth. And that's it, just asking a fiscally responsible question
and agree with it,
about the process.
Council
That's
President.
all. No, thank you very much, Vanessa. The chair recognizes Councilmember Kendra Brooks, Minority Leader.
Much, Council President. Good morning, colleagues, and I want to thank everyone from the Park Administration for your testimony today. I actually appreciate the work that you've put into presenting this budget, and I look forward to hearing more over the coming weeks about your priorities. Before I get into my questions, I want to name a few things I'm thinking about as we enter the budget season. One thing is that I'm excited to hear more about how the administration is tackling the affordability crisis. I appreciate the focus on economic mobility and the commitments to job growth as laid out in the budget. However, I do have some questions about whether we are prioritizing the right strategies to accomplish this. The DC 33 contract negotiations shaped my thinking. The contract left many feeling the city was not prioritizing the workforce the way that they should. Public sector jobs have long been a pathway to a middle-class lifestyle, particular for Black families. The administration is saying that Philadelphia is facing headwinds from an uncertain economic outlook and the Trump administration. Despite this, we have codified tax cuts through fiscal year 2039. When I hear about more taxes on ride shares and delivery service, I have concerns that we are not looking at progressive forms of revenue generation. I've long championed the wealth tax and introduced a bill last year along with council members O'Rourke and Gautier to enact one. Experts say it could bring around $200 million a year. And finally, over the last years, this council has funded a lot of big-ticket priority items for the administration, including the wellness ecosystem and the home initiatives. When many of these plans came to council, they lacked important details, but there was a commitment to find solutions to the addiction crisis and affordable housing. And I have the same, I really hope during this budget cycle, we can get more concrete details and numbers about some of these initiatives. With that said, I want to start off with some questions about the Economic Mobility Cabinet. Can the administration share the details about what exactly this cabinet will be responsible for? Another question is, how many employees of the city have the City College for Municipal Employees graduated? And how many are now working for the city? How many students are currently enrolled? And what is the 3 highest programs being pursued by the current enrollment? And I'm just go off do a couple more and then stop. And in the budget document, it says that the city has faced difficulties attracting and retaining staff in a complex, competitive labor market. Can you say more about what the difficulties are, and do you think the contract fight like the one we saw last summer with DC 33 contribute to those challenges?
Thank you so much. First, we will work with Candy Jones, our head of the Office of Human Resources, to address your questions around vacancies and challenges. She'll also address some of the points you made around the negotiations last year and the historic investments that we've made into not only our workforce, our exempt workforce, but our labor workforce as well, and a civil service workforce. We are always looking at affordability, and we're thinking strategically about our approach to economic mobility. So it's not just one work stream, but work streams across government. When we looked at the research from Raj Chetty that talked about the city being in last place, we did not want to have a knee-jerk reaction to being in 50th place. We've done extensive research looking at first the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, who was in the same place that we were in many years ago. We looked at their strategic approach to how they moved up from 50th place to where they are now. And some of their practices we have adopted and incorporated into our organizational structure. That was the formation of Nadir Jones's role in his office, business impact and economic advancement, and streamlining the work that we do under OEO to ensure that we're ready for any storm, including regulatory changes that's happened at the federal level. Additionally, you talked about how, our investment or what's happening along TNCs or rideshare. I think that's at least my interpretation of some of the points that you raised, Councilmember Brooks, around the tax. What we are finding is that with the significant investments that we've made into our transportation system, into SEPTA in particular, we find that as people go down that economic mobility scale or are struggling economically, we see an increase in ridership in SEPTA, which is why, from an affordability perspective, we are investing even more dollars into SEPTA to help ensure that people have access to that benefit, not just in our workforce, but even beyond that. Additionally, when we look at the ridership or the TNCs, the transportation network companies, we find that as people are more wealthier, the usership or ridership increases. So it actually is a progressive form of looking at how we're investing our dollars and our revenue generating approach. So I wanted to put that out there. And it does, help to embolden and strengthen our roadmap to self-sufficiency, which we call our GPS model to economic mobility, focusing on growth, prosperity, and security. So on the growth side, we're looking at both an inclusive and dynamic economy where we're looking at small businesses on our neighborhood corridors, as you mentioned, and we certainly will get that data to you. To Council President's point, that was a really great question, Councilmember Jones. On the prosperity front, we are looking at, shared access to that ladder, and not just in a theoretical way, but we're thinking strategically about what that shared access does and what it means. So when we look at workforce development, our work and approach has always been fragmented across government, and we took the first step last year of streamlining our workforce and approach by really expanding what our original model was around the City College for Municipal Employment. Originally, it was just looking at municipal employment, but we realized that it deserved a more comprehensive approach. And Director Carol DeFries will talk about what that comprehensive approach looks like, including real investments that we're making, not just internally, but also with external stakeholders as well, including new investments in this budget. And then finally, on the security side, we are looking at how do we make sure that we have real protections from economic shocks. And that's looking at everything from housing affordability, workforce housing, looking at housing as both a gateway and a ladder to economic mobility. I'll turn it over now to Carol DeFries to answer the questions around CCME and the work that we're doing there. And then Candy Jones to talk about our actual decrease of vacancies that we've made and the historic investments that we've made in DC 33 and amongst the other labor unions as well, and then what we are looking forward to negotiating. We won't get into detail about that because, of course, we're still in negotiations with Local 22, but what we're trying to accomplish through that to ensuring that we're advancing our economic mobility strategy. So I'll turn it over to Carol, then Candy.
Good morning, City Council. It's Carol DeFries, Executive Director of the City College for Municipal Employment, and thank you for the opportunity to share our strategy around the City College for Municipal Employment and Workforce Programming. As the Chief of Staff mentioned, we have definitely launched in October of 2024 with CCP a variety of programs to pipeline individuals into city employment, but since then we've expanded the work that we're doing to include high school populations, to include upskilling, and then also to include the external investments in workforce organizations that can train Philadelphians for quality jobs. In terms of the enrollments, I think if you look holistically across all of those different pipelines that we're undertaking, we have about, in FY25, more than 300 individuals that enrolled in the various different programs, and I think we're on track for about 400 this year. Everybody who starts a different program ends at a different timeline, so we're now at a point where we are have about 47 completers of the specific pipelines that are at CCP that are designed to go into city employment. And out of that, we have at least 9 people who are now employed by the City of Philadelphia. The programs that have been most attractive and then that have been hired by the city are in the business and administration, in procurement, and in the technology space. We also have a strong interest in the patient services rep program, but we haven't yet reached and will in May individuals who will be completing that full program. So we're excited about working with the health department on transitioning individuals into those programs. In addition, we have a few individuals who are have pending offers, and they're in the hiring process with the city, but until those are completed, I don't want to count those numbers. And then we have about 12 individuals who are currently on eligibility lists. So they're going through the civil service process, and depending on where they fall, they get pulled off the list when, depending on their ranking. So there's significant movement, I would say, and then one of the newest introductions in the FY27 is the CCME Fellows Program, which is really a best practice in providing work-based learning and on-the-job training for individuals within the city of Philadelphia to then be pipelined into the civil service roles that are aligned with those CCME fellows. And that we're piloting that with the procurement department right now. So 5 individuals have been hired to run the vendor management unit there. There's a bunch of other information about some of the other programs, but I think that answered specifically what you were asking.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Candy Jones, Chief Human Resources Officer. So with regard to the city's overall vacancy rate, we are around 14%. And so I am very excited about this number. The last time I had the pleasure of speaking with you all, I think we were at 18%. And so we're making significant headway. That's to include all of our recruitment efforts, our partnerships with our sister departments, our partnerships with City Council. We have made some really significant headway in increasing the numbers for the city. And just really quickly, I have a few numbers, but for last year, for 2025, we hired 3,400 people. 64% of those are in hard-to-fill classes. And so we're talking about police officers, correctional officers, laborers, facilities care worker, used to be called custodial worker, firefighters. And so we are making significant headway, and that is really because of the partnerships of council and our departments, and we're proud of the hires and the movement that we're making to grow the workforce. With regard to District Council 33 and 47 and the contracts that we have already negotiated, we have implemented all of the raises for those contracts, but we continue the work and the conversations with our union partners. The Office of Human Resources has an ongoing relationship, ongoing conversations with our union partners in order to identify and meet their needs, right? So how do we approach hard-to-fill classes? What are we looking at with regard to pay discrepancies in some of their titles? And so outside of the negotiation space, that work continues. And so we continue to do that, and we continue our recruitment efforts in some of those titles as well.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilmember Bass and Councilmember Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I too want to start with a round of thank yous, and I want to really say thank you to the entire administration, because I'm sure that in my work as a district council member, we touch every single department, and I have to tell you that people come through. You really come through, and I have to say I appreciate it, my constituents appreciate it, and they see the work. They see things being done, so thank you to all of the departments. I just had a couple of questions I wanted to ask, and the first was a follow-up to the council president's question about what have we cut in terms of, knowing that we're asking for folks to dig deeper. And as we're asking that, what exactly have we cut? I did hear from Ms. Maynard that we cut 50,000 here and 250 there and 300 here. I think the largest I heard was about 7 million. But that's really just for a $7 billion budget. It's really just, a very small amount that it looks like we're cutting. And then at the same time as we're having these cuts, I also heard that we were adding some additional positions. So can you give us, help us have an understanding of exactly what's happening here?
I'll go over the largest cuts first and then turn it over to my colleague, Sabrina Maynard.
Can you sum them up?
Yeah, so $9.4 million in recurring overtime. We're cutting that out of the police, PPD's budget.
I mean, just in total, what would you say the amount of the cuts are?
I'm not that good. I can add it up as she's talking.
Yes, you are. You are. Believe in yourself. No, just kidding. But if someone could add that up for us and give us an idea of what the total amount of the cuts are. And what I'm trying to do is contrast the cuts versus the new spending, because there were some new positions that were, added. So what are we really cutting?
Yeah, so actually we should definitely make sure some of the items are one-time, some of them are recurring, so we want to give you a 5-year number, so we'll follow up in writing on the total.
Say that again.
For the cuts, so some of them are one-time, some of them are recurring, some of them vary by year, so I don't want us to do quick math and give you a bad number. We should give you a good number.
Okay.
We'll check that out.
Can we have that today?
We'll follow up, yep.
Yeah.
And so in thinking about this, we wanted to prioritize items that would not have a service impact. That was really how we thought about this process.
You want to I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Say again.
Sorry, I'm probably not close because of the chairs. We really wanted to prioritize items that would not have a service impact. We didn't want to reduce services. That was kind of the structure we came in with. Further reductions would require adjustments to services, and so that was really our priority. In terms of the positions we're adding, it's a few in a couple of places. Some of the positions we're adding are items that will be funded by some of the things that we're proposing. So we talked a little bit about the pothole squads. We're proposing to add positions in streets that will do that work. That's directly funded by that new revenue source. So that was part of how we thought about it.
Okay.
So our general fund spending is budgeted to increase just by under 1% from 26 to 27, which is roughly about 67 million, but we can give you that breakdown as well.
Okay. So another question for you. So I wanted to contrast the home initiative to rebuild. And the contrast is that we just can't seem to complete projects in a timely manner. As some of you know who were around during rebuild, I think actually most of you were around in some capacity during rebuild. It was supposed to be a $500 million 7-year project, which goes on now into its 10th or 11th year, depending on how you count it. It's been a very long time. And so we were, the belief and the sell of rebuild was that we were going to be able to get these capital projects out the door in a much more timely fashion. And so now as we, look at capital projects and our 5-year plan, it becomes frustrating for many of us that we don't see what was promised to us, and more importantly, promised to our constituents, the folks who said that they would be okay with that soda tax, who said, oh, let's get the soda tax because we're going to get new playgrounds, we're going to get new parks and recreation centers and libraries, and it's going to be done within 7 years. And it was just a great sale. We're going to have improvements in terms of more community schools. And we do have more, but I don't know that people feel the impact that we believe we were going to feel from the soda tax.
So as Aparna Palantino comes up to answer that question more in depth, I want to make sure that we don't forget about COVID. Those were real
absolutely.
years.
No, absolutely, yes.
So those were real years. Those were difficult years.
We lost time.
And we lost time,
yes.
But also there were significant impacts to the supply chain. And certainly those are not excuses, but those are real factors. But despite that, I'm very, very proud of the progress that the rebuild team has made. There. I mean, I remember year one walking in and seeing every room filled with students and parents and volunteers and football players and cheerleaders. Every single room was filled and the roof was caving in. We told them it was dangerous to enter into the building and they said, this is the best we have. And it was a shame. And we worked with Council President Johnson, then Councilmember Johnson of his district. And we worked very hard, and we cast a vision, and we made promises, and we made good on those promises, but not just there. King Sessing, every district, we've made promises. We have more to deliver, but I'm very, very proud of the work that the team has done, not just on the capital side, but my Parks and Recreation colleagues, the work that they've done as well on the operating side, because we don't just want shiny buildings. We also want to make sure that they're well-resourced. Is there more work to be done? Absolutely. But to suggest in any way that we've not made good on our promises, that we've not used the revenue from the soda tax to invest in these sites, it's just not true. But you don't have to go on what I say. Go to King Sessing, go to Vare. I'll turn it over to Aparna to talk more about all of the investments that we've made in each district using those dollars, not just in recreation centers, Councilmember Bass, but also in our libraries and also with community schools and pre-K and on. And so we've been very fiscally responsible. That's just not a catchphrase that Mayor Parker throws out there. You know, I see my esteemed colleague that leads the library, Kelly Richards, that can talk about those investments. Yes, we're making new investments there, but we have been very responsible with the rebuilt dollars and despite the challenges that we faced during COVID. So I'll turn it over to Aparna to talk through that.
Before you turn it over to Aparna, I do want to say that in no way am I suggesting that there wasn't anything done. But what I am suggesting is that what we sold our constituents is not what they got with the soda tax. What we said we were going to provide is not what we have provided to date. That doesn't mean that there haven't been great things that have been done, that we haven't seen some improvements, but I'm just going to use my district as an example. And this was prior to your term, so I want to say that, you know, you weren't the responsible party for making these decisions. But when rebuild decisions were made, it was unequally yoked in terms of who got what. And so you have districts, what you had was districts that traditionally have been over-resourced in certain neighborhoods who got, you know, a little something here and a little something there. And then you got the bulk of, I would say, minority neighborhoods who got between $50 and $60 million spent in their neighborhoods. And then you had a district like mine, which had been traditionally under-resourced, which received about $24 million. And so we're still working to catch that up because the people of the 8th District deserve, I know you're a resident constituent, but deserve in your neighborhood to have the same level of resource and investment that other neighborhoods have. And so that's really what we're trying to do here, is make sure every neighborhood gets what they should get, but also to acknowledge that, you know, besides COVID, we are playing a bit of a catch-up game. We are still trying to make good on those promises. And I think if you ask in most neighborhoods, if people feel, if they look at their rec center and you ask them, do you feel that, you know, rebuild and the soda tags equaled out to a great rec center for you and your neighborhood? I don't believe that they're going to enthusiastically agree. But that doesn't mean that nothing has been done. It just means that people don't feel the impact the way it was sold. And again, this wasn't on your watch, but we are still playing catch up. The overall point being here is that we can't seem to complete projects in a timely fashion. So that's what I wanted to, you know, talk to you guys about. And Aparna is fantastic to work with. Her and her team do an outstanding job. You know, it's not the Capital Projects Office. I don't know why it takes so long to get where we're trying to get to, but it takes a very long time, is my point.
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Bass. So I just want to give an update on the overall rebuild program. So we had completed our $100 million in borrowing last year and our last bond tranche of $140 million this year. So we spent $100 million on rebuild projects last year, and we anticipate the final bond to be expended by the end of this year. Of the 72 projects or sites that were defined for rebuild, we have 43 completed, 17 currently in construction, 7 in design or engagement, and 9 in pre-design and assessment. So we anticipate in the very near future completing that list of 72 sites. Specifically, with regards to your district, Councilmember Bass, I know there's two large projects that are actually under construction at the moment, Penati and Barrett, for example. We knew that the initial estimate for those projects was not sufficient. Through city capital dollars, we've added funding to be able to move those along. So while rebuild was a wonderful idea, I think one of the challenges was finding the processes, and I don't think any of us sitting here today would have realized that the process that was implemented actually created further delays as opposed to a typical capital process to some extent. But we are moving, all of the sites will be completed through this administration.
I know I'm out of time. I'll come back. Do I have more time? Okay. So so you're saying that these projects will be completed at what point in this term?
In this administration.
In this administration's
Yes.
term. So that would be the end of 2027. So that would be 18, 19 months or something. I forget. I'm like, okay.
Sorry, there may be one or two that go past that.
Okay.
They will be in construction.
Okay, all right. Because we have a number of projects, again, in my council district that haven't been touched at all, including, I want to give a special shout out to Jerome Brown Playground because they've really been struggling for quite some time now. A previous director said it was a palace, much to the dismay, and folks were just appalled from the folks who are the advisory board from that recreation center when she said, oh, this is a palace compared to many because it's, it's in quite significant need to be addressed. So we're looking forward to getting that done. I think that's it for now, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilman Dr. Anthony Phillips and then Councilman Jamie Gaultier.
Council President, could I just note for the record
Absolutely.
that the comment regarding Jerome Brown, because I know what you're referencing, that was said by a former PPR leader, not a current PPR leader. I just want to make sure that that is not a reflection on how members of the Parker administration feels. We believe that every child deserves a VAER experience, deserves a King Sessing experience, and under the amazing leadership of Sue Slauson.
A VAER experience.
A VAER experience.
All right, a VAER experience.
That's what we're all trying to get to.
And so but I just wanted to make sure that it is noted for the record that that comment that you're referencing, it does not reflect any member of this leadership team here today.
1 second, Member Bass. I think your microphone.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I am glad to hear it. The comment, it was pretty harsh to be sitting in this space and be told it's a palace. And the community really did not appreciate it. And quite frankly, let Ms. Otlevel know that your comment is really unacceptable. I'm glad to know that this administration values the community and recognizes that these substandard sort of conditions that a lot of our rec centers have been in for a very long time are not acceptable. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm looking forward to getting Jerome Brown done this year if possible. I'm just kidding. As soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Dr. Anthony Phillips and Councilman Jamie Gaultier.
Thank you, Council President. I want to note that this budget process is really important to all of us. It's one of our most important responsibilities. And I want to thank the administration. I've seen great growth in Chief of Staff Tiffany Thurman over the years, and she's continued to get better. So I want to say thank you for your leadership. I also want to say
Here you go with the Northwest shout-outs. That's all that's about.
I'm getting there now. So, throughout this process, one of my primary focuses on city government, and city government is going to be on accountability and results. For me, it's not enough for us to fund programs in departments, but we also have to make sure that those investments lead to timely service, which is a key theme that I'm focusing on in this budget process, is responsive government. I believe that we all do care about the quality of life and of our neighbors, but how we get there is also just as important. I tell our Chief of Staff, Emmanuel Wilkerson, who works with me, sometimes how the process is done, right, is as important as the results. And I've seen him grow over the years with helping get the process right, as opposed to he always delivered in the beginning, the result was amazing, but now the process is going to be better. For me, one of my growing frustrations that I've seen even before City Council was that I would call then my councilperson, Sherelle Parker, and something would get done. But then if I went through a 311 system or regular channels of city government, it didn't get done in the same fashion. For me, that's not fair. What I'm asking for in this particular budget season is that every of the 126 departments and agencies, that they begin to reflect on their service level agreements, establish clear service level agreements, but also be accountable to those service level agreements. There are some departments, including the Department of Sanitation and Director of Clean and Green, Carlton Williams and Crystal Jacob Shipman, Commissioner, who have been excellent with service level agreements, and across the board, the city has seen that. However, those expectations are not set clearly for departments like the Philadelphia Water Department, who we've talked about before, and hopefully they grow in their customer service relations, especially around water main breaks. We have service level agreements that are even broken in the police department, which has been doing an incredible job. But even the 911, which is kind of separate from them in some capacity, the 911 operators, unfortunately, are not responding in a timely fashion. We also have license and inspection that often, at times, 80 violations on sometimes some properties, and there's no threshold on whether or not it's going to go to sheriff's cell or some other in the area. I see Melissa Scott, who's doing an incredible job with trying to work with 301 to improve that service. But one of the things that my first question really has to do with Philly Stat 360 and the Chief Administrative Office. What are you doing to work closely with city council offices to be more neighborhood facing, to understand what are the clear metrics that you really want to see, that neighbors really want to see? And then also, what are we going to make sure that every department is really being held accountable to customer service level agreements so that we could be more efficient?
Thank you so much, Councilmember Phillips, for that question. So the approach is twofold. So we have, yes, Philly Stat 360, and we track those metrics. We also receive data points, of course, from the departments. We also have a new Office of Public Engagement and Neighborhood Affairs. There are boots on the ground in every district to ensure that we are that see, touch, and feel type of government, where neighbors can come in and share what their experiences are around, or lack thereof, to your point, around the service level agreements across the cadre of departments that you mentioned. So I'd first like to call up Anton Moore to talk about, because you mentioned the neighborhood aspect of that work, the work that he's doing that then, and under his leadership, that then feeds into Philly Stat 360, goes directly to the departments to be responsive to the needs of the neighborhoods across government in real time on a day-to-day basis. And then after Anton talks about that work and the reporting that they do, the metrics that they track in real time, and that they feed to our leadership in real time, that they're then responsive to in real time, what that process is like, as well as then Kristen Bray can talk about the Philly Stat 360 and those point-in-time metrics as well that help to tell a fulsome story about our approach to a responsive government.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Council Member. So Philly Stat 360 continues to build out the public-facing metrics that we have on our website. Most recently, we initiated a couple new metrics on the website, including a Kensington dashboard, and are continuing to build out data around other dashboards that are informative to the public. We are currently working with Anton Moore to have those constituency engagements. We also invite feedback through our website for constituents to give us directly what they want to have seen on the website. In addition, we have been working closely with Director Gear on the Kensington Community Advisory Board to get feedback from that specific community on what they wanted to see. In the background, beyond that public-facing website, which I would say is just the tip of the iceberg, the Philly Stat 360 team meets regularly with departments to ensure that they are tracking on the performance that they have promised the constituents, and when they are not tracking on that performance, we help build them in a direction that they continue to deliver on those services. In addition, we engage in what we call problem-solving stats, which is when we bring in a number of different departments to work together collaboratively to answer bigger problems within the city. Again, with the example of Kensington, we focused on 710 properties within that district that were causing some significant problems. And we have departments from both our public safety agencies, our health and human service agencies, and from our core supporting departments to all work together to try to solve the issues in that. We also meet regularly on issues like nuisance businesses and issues surrounding 311 to make sure that all the departments are working together and not working in silos to deliver services. Director?
I want to welcome Mr. Anton Moore, City Council, his first budget hearing. Thank you, sir. In case of you may or may not know, he hails from the great part of Philadelphia known as South Philly, specifically Point Breeze area. Welcome, young man.
Thank you. I would like to, thank council. My name is Anton Moore. I'm Executive Director of Public Engagement and Neighborhood Affairs. I'd like to thank, Council President, entire council body for allowing us, to speak. One of the things, we want to mention are the issues that we're addressing at the neighborhood centers that we have all across Philadelphia. For the first time, we have all 10 centers that are opened in every district. We just opened up the second council district. Some of the things that we've been able to address throughout, various districts is the graffiti at 21.8%. Illegal dumping is one of the issues that come up. Street potholes at 6.31%. What is this? What is this? What is this? I can't see it. Inlet Clayton, I'm sorry, at 5.8%. We have recycling at 4.8%, permits, licenses at 3.2%, streets, sidewalks, alleys at 2.8%, trees at 2.5%, water, gas, utilities at 2.6%, and also abandoned vehicles at 2.2%. And the reason why, as was mentioned with these neighborhood city halls, is we want people within the neighborhoods able to come to us and get these things addressed. We also been able to introduce pop-ups because Philadelphia is made up of neighborhoods, whereas though you have certain people in certain areas that won't travel to different areas. So here in the second district, you have people that live at 20th and let's say 20th and Snyder. They won't travel out to Grace Ferry, to get resources. So what we've been able to do is able to do pop-ups in the different areas to address concerns within the neighborhood. And this has been working great, but we're just getting it in. In addition to that, as we mentioned, we have canvassers going to be out the neighborhood. We sent a message to City Council. We want to work together with you guys to have our canvassers throughout the neighborhood and let us know that we have pop-ups and our different resources in the neighborhood so we can actually address those issues.
Just want to say thank you so much, Council President. And the whole point of the matter is, and thanks, Anton, for your leadership. The whole point of the matter is that we're just trying to get the city of Philadelphia to look like the Amazon and DoorDash, is where you can put in a tracking number and be able to look at your service level agreement. Not every Philadelphian is coming to a hearing and they will hear our PHDC executive directors say the reason why they're in the queue is because it's a supply and demand issue. We know that. I get calls all the time by PHDC, when I'm gonna get my roof, but I think if it was much more clear for when people are going to process, it would help people understand what the wait time it is and why. So just that's the most important. And marketing, 5 seconds. I think our city does a great job, but I just want to put on the record that I think every department needs to figure out how to market that great job in a way. And if you do a good tree, put a notice around neighborhoods saying that. And I think Anton can work on that and so forth. But yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's what we're actually about to do, is actually tell these stories. Because a lot of times people think on social media that it's not happening. But if you're able to tell those stories and get residents to say, hey, look, this tree that fell down, we was able to address that. And once we tell those stories, I think people feel more comfortable about it. And we're going to do it across all 10 districts, working with you guys as well.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilman Jamie Gaultier, then Councilman Dr. Nina Ahmad, then Councilman Nicholas O'Roy.
Thank you, Council President, and good afternoon to all of you, and thanks to the whole administration for the work that you do on behalf of our communities every day. My first line of questioning is around the home initiative. I'm really excited to know that the bond funds will be coming as soon as the end of this week. After all the hard work that we all put in over the fall to make sure that this first year budget reflects the needs of our most cost-burdened renters and homeowners, we will soon be able to see the direct impact of this major housing initiative. And so we have the money secured, and now it's time for us to spend that money and start putting it to work. Along those lines, we have about 3.5 months until the owner of the 925-unit housing portfolio, Neighborhood Restorations, an affordable housing portfolio, will be put up on the market. These units are in the 3rd and 4th council districts, and they represent 12% of the entire city's government contracted rental housing that is set to expire over the next 10 years. Many of them are in gentrifying areas, so it stands to reason that once the affordability contracts roll off, they will be transformed into market rate housing. And so we need to take action on this portfolio right now. And my People's Preservation Package initially brought us a year to get this done, but at this point we have 3.5 months left and the clock is running out. If we fail to act, it would be incredibly hard, if not impossible, to build enough affordable homes to replace what we have lost, erasing the progress that we've been working so hard to achieve. But we have an advantage this time. Unlike Brith Shalom, unlike the University City Townhomes, this owner is at the table and wants to make this work. But the city has to demonstrate that we are willing to step up and ensure that these 925 homes remain permanently affordable, and that any resident in a single-family home also has the opportunity to become first-time home buyers, and many of them are interested. So I would like to ask, will the city today commit to lead and help fund this unique preservation opportunity that represents such a large percentage of the units that we must save over the next 10 years?
We are not going to make that commitment today, but that is not reflective of our overall commitment, nor is it reflective of our commitment to your district, as well as the other districts that you mentioned.
Okay.
We'll continue to work together in a robust process. I'll have Jesse Lawrence come up, who's the Director of Planning, to talk about what that process will be. But we have a process already underway. We will continue with that, and that is not reflective of our overall commitment. I want to be very clear on that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that answer. I'm hoping that when Jesse gets to the table, we can have a little more clarity and specifics, because from what I can see, this opportunity checks off every box that Mayor Parker says is important to her. It stabilizes row home neighborhoods, as 500 of these units are single-family homes. It has the potential to create hundreds of new first-time homeownership opportunities. It helps city workers, as everyone from 311 operators to rec leaders to DC 33 members live inside these units. And because the portfolio generates positive cash flow, it can actually be a really affordable deal for the city if we make it happen now. The city's investment on a per unit basis would be 50% less than its standard investment in projects awarded through our RFP process. Mortgages for first-time home buyers would be cheaper than turnkey mortgages for bigger houses and better better or more desirable, rather, neighborhoods. And of course, it will all be at a fraction of what it would cost if the city had to replace this type of housing if they are lost to the private market. But the truth is that the city could never, ever replace a portfolio like this, even with unlimited funds, because the land in these communities, many of them gentrifying, does not exist anymore. So I'd love for you, Jesse, to give more clarity and also to speak to all of these factors present with this portfolio that seem to align very well with Mayor Parker's initiative and values as it relates to housing.
Thank you. My name is Jesse Lawrence. I'm Director of Planning and Development. Council member, we have committed to at least having the conversation, which you know, right? And in the preliminary part of that conversation, we've been able to identify how massive, to your point, this portfolio is, which means it takes a significant amount of resources. We can make these preliminary thoughts about what the numbers actually are to be able to rehab some of which is not in the best condition. I think it would be not smart for us to think about how we can invest everything into one area when we are committed to a very comprehensive strategy that is citywide at this point. You can attest to the fact that we haven't even got physical needs assessments for any of these buildings yet. So to make some sort of monetary commitment at this point without having the factors that are at the center of conversations with any potential buyer or any potential seller at this point, it's preemptive. And we are still operating under that assumption that we are too far and too soon to be able to make these kinds of commitments. We are certainly committed to preserving opportunities. That is not gone away. We just want to have a very, we want to have robust and fluent conversation about what exactly existing conditions are. And with this portfolio, we are not there yet.
I think that with a portfolio that could never be rebuilt, to be clear, these are twice the size of turnkey units and much less of a cost. I would think that with a portfolio like this that represents 12% of the expiring units in the city, that we would move with haste around getting information on the condition. But I also, I understand that you all want to work towards a comprehensive citywide preservation strategy. I think that the last time we had this conversation was back in September, so 6 months ago. Where are you on putting together a comprehensive citywide strategy on preservation that would allow us to talk more specifically about the neighborhood restoration portfolio and all of the other units that we must save?
So I'd like to call up Mark Dodds, who can speak to the database that we've been putting together to be able to roll out. But at this point, a lot of what we have been leaning on is waiting for the opportunity to tap into funding to be able to do so. One of the things that we've obviously earmarked in the home bond is preservation money, right? So I think that we did not want to put the cart before the horse in understanding what we had access to before we started committing funds to that. We are at that point, again, to your point, the conversation we're having is literally along those lines to make sure that we can align what strategy we come up with, which is still to be determined. We're just now getting the money in a few days, actually. But we are committed to aligning whatever strategy we come up with opportunities such as the neighborhood restoration portfolio, not necessarily leaning to the ability for that portfolio to cannibalize our entire commitment, but we're still at development stages when it comes to that.
Are you saying we were waiting for the home bonds before we could put together a strategy on preservation units?
I'm saying that everything costs money and we need to know what we have access to before we start making commitments to these types of things.
We agreed on $46 million for the preservation line during the first year spending plan negotiations.
I'm aware of that.
So we committed to continuing to work with you. We've already told you that off the record last week. We're saying it on the record today. You can hold us accountable to that. We're continuing to move forward in the process, and we look forward to working with you in that process. It will be open.
How much? 46 million?
Absolutely. No, I did not.
One district?
No. I did not say that.
That was the entire
I did not.
first year plan.
I did not say that.
What are we doing over here?
No, I did not say that. What I did say is that, yeah,
I'm just
we
making
have.
right. Go
I
ahead.
appreciate that, but we are committed to continuing to work, and that means efficiently. It means swiftly, because we understand the impact and also the opportunity that is at hand. But we're not going to do it at this table right now. We're not making a commitment to a time certain or a dollar amount, but we are committed to working with you and your office in this process, and we will keep our commitment. You can hold us accountable to that.
Thank you. I'm wrapping up, basically. I do think I heard Jesse say that Mark was going to come up and talk about the progress on the comprehensive preservation plan.
What I said was Mark was going to come up to talk about the database that we've been putting together to map out these opportunities, such as those in the neighborhood portfolios. And I don't see Mark, but...
Mark, right behind you. Mark, just state your name for the record, please. And this is a comprehensive database to look at projects in the city of Philadelphia that will be going off the preservation roads, basically.
That is correct.
Where individuals could be subject to possibly being homeless, correct?
That is correct.
Yes, this was created through my legislation, the People's Preservation Package.
Good, okay. Go ahead, Mark, good to see you.
Good to see you. Mark Dodds, Deputy Director, Division of Housing and Community Development. That's right. We've made, as you know, we've made a lot of progress on this database. It is part of the preservation package you mentioned. Where we are right now is we're working with, what makes this database unique is that it's not just city subsidized properties, but it takes into account all different types of subsidy. We're working through the NHPD, or the National Housing Preservation Database, to make sure, basically we're going through legal stuff right now with their lawyers to get clearance to use their data on our site. It's going to be a comprehensive mapping tool. It's going to be publicly available. It's going to have additional information, not just the properties that are set to expire, but we'll be able to have an understanding if they're in markets that have risk of displacement, things of that nature.
Thank you. We have the database, we have the money, we have to act. The goal is to act before the units expire. But thank you, and I look forward to further conversation. Thanks, Council President.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilmember Dr. Nina Ahmed, then Councilmember Nicholas O'Rourke, and after that, we will have Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, everyone. I deeply appreciate the administration's presentation on the 5-year plan and the capital program. And, you know, city has a lot of very devoted public servants. It is very clear. Thank you.
Could you speak into your microphone,
yes, sorry.
please?
I said the city has a lot of devoted public servants, and I am very grateful for that. As we review these investments in council, I want to stress that our budget choices reflect our values. The budget is a moral document, and that means we must invest in health and well-being of our residents and in our children and the future of the city. I know we'll have another opportunity to talk about the schools closures and all the issues that are going on there. This new allocation that is going to come from the increasing the tax, I would really like to get a handle on how that's impacting these school closures, particularly the one I've been advocating for is Lankino, but we will come back to that later. I want to focus on public health here. So public health, housing, education, neighborhood stability are all interconnected. These are all determinants of good health. And I want to specifically speak about the timeline for the health center that has been proposed for a 42-month timeline. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So at this point, you have the legislative authority, you have the appropriation done for the fund. There's a RCAP already allocated for $15 million. In the Northeast, the wait for a pediatric patient is 4 times that of the rest of Philadelphia. So this is a health desert, and you all have actually mentioned that as well. I just want to know, why is it going to take 42 months, if that is correct, versus a much shorter time, because the need is great?
Good afternoon, Council President and Council members. My name is Dr. Palak Ravel Nelson, and I am the Health Commissioner for the City of Philadelphia. The timeline that you're specifically asking about, Council Member, is kind of the overall project as we're going through the bid process. There's 2 health centers. They're on separate tracks.
Yes.
They were unbundled. The FTC site is moving in its own trajectory. As far as the Friends site is concerned, right now we're in the process of selecting the appropriate contract and design entity. The 42-hour, our goal is to make sure that we under-promise, over-deliver, for lack of better words, right? So it takes a long time. The building itself was demolished, and it takes a while to build the building appropriately, and there are concerns about the advocates want us to fast-track the design and everything, but again, as you pointed out, this is a health center. Yeah. We have to make sure that the design and construction is done properly, and that it is built in a way that it's going to be around for about 80 years taking care of our patients. So that is kind of the outskirts of the design. We are working with CPO and all of the city departments, as well as the various advocates and Councilmember Lozada's office and other offices, as well as your office, to see what we can do about getting these buildings built as efficiently as possible.
Thank you. So I appreciate that it has to be built properly with the right parameters, but this time frame is really, given how long it took to come here, right? The advocates have talked to you about different ways to fast track this. Governor Shapiro is doing his own fast tracking. I think the city should be doing a similar fast track as his executive order has outlined. We can do the design and build delivery much faster. And there's a historic review process apparently also there, so that could be expedited. I think we just need to make it a priority. Things in the Northeast, as my Northeast constituents tell me, feel they're not a priority. So I need to have a clear conversation with constituents there, particularly the Friends Hospital, and tell them exactly and respond. They emailed all of us, and have a response for them instead of it just going into some vacuum somewhere, because people are waiting, children are getting unhealthy. This impacts all of us, Measles virus is not contained within the Northeast. It's gonna come everywhere. So I think it behooves us, if we are talking about a healthy Philadelphia, that we make it a priority. We see it to be a priority. My constituents see it to be a priority. That means being front and center, saying and being clear, and being accountable about deadlines that you set yourself. So I hear you when you say, we're putting a longer and we'll deliver. That doesn't make our constituents feel any better, because they have been overlooked for so long. And this is one of our fastest growing parts of Philadelphia. We want to get to 2 million. Northeast is the pathway through it. So I'm looking to see from you a clear pathway that you will share. Council President, I'd like to get a timeline, a really clear timeline with what are the problems with it and where we can help you expedite it. We should bring in our congressional representative, Brendan Boyle, on this as well. We can, if we really put our mind to it, we can expedite this.
I want to be clear, that's already happening. We're meeting with our congressional partners. We're meeting with and working very closely with the Shapiro team as well as our Philadelphia delegation under the leadership of course, Representative Morgan Cephas, but, or I should say, and under the amazing leadership of Chairman Jordan Harris. That is happening. At our last intergovernmental roundtable, we talked about that very thing. So check the box, yes, that's happening. Aparna's going to talk about what we have fast-tracked in our wellness ecosystem overall, yes, which also includes the health centers. So we are aligned. We are yes, absolutely aligned there.
I hear you.
Because excuse me, 1 second, ma'am. I have a point of information, Councilmember Ketsi Lozada.
I just want to make a point of clarification, a point of information. I think that I want my colleague to also understand that we've been very clear with and transparent with all of the residents that are involved around these two particular health centers that will be in the 7th Council District. We've held meetings, information meetings, we've held meetings around like what they wanted to see and how they wanted to be engaged. There is a commitment from both groups that are involved in the development around, what types of services will be there. We've worked very closely with the health department they have shown up time and time and time again. I also want to make sure that we put on the record that there is information from some of these groups that are providing misinformation. There was also a legal process that we had to get through in order to move this project forward, because there was some opposition as a result of the misinformation that was being put out there. And so I respect my colleague. I have the utmost respect for my colleague, but I want to make sure that I put on the record that the health department, license and inspection, and both of the groups that are involved in the development of these very important health centers in the 7th Council District, that they're aware that everyone is on the same page, right? There's just misinformation out there that is causing some of this delay. And so, you know, I want to give credit to the health department, because the commissioner has been extremely supportive and has shown up every single time we've asked her to show up. She has stayed as long as necessary for everyone's questions to be responded to.
So I want to thank you.
Excuse me one second. Chair recognizes Councilman Dr. Nina Mai.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Councilmember Lozada. I know all of you have been working very hard, but facts are facts. I want to know, what is the timeline? Is it 42 months? Is it 24 months? What is holding us back from that? And very importantly, we were able to have a 6-month turnaround in the Wellness Center in Riverview. So we know how to do this, right? I know there have been other issues that have held us up, and those seem to have been cleared now. So that's why I want to ask now, what is the timeline and what is holding us back to make it faster? Because this has been an underserved community for a very long time. So you have to take that into account as to why there's frustration from our community members when they have seen other things happen. You know, 95 fixed in, 10 days, right? And this is health of children we're talking about. So the urgency that needs to happen, I just need to see everybody saying, okay, let's get to it. I know you can do it. Well, I just want to understand what that looks like. And I said 42, I don't know if that's actually accurate, so you can inform me.
Yeah, and you took the words right out of my mouth, Councilmember Lozada. We've been working very, very closely with Councilmember Lozada on this very issue. So we are not dragging our feet. We are moving efficiently and expeditiously. I think the thing that we cannot discount is that there needed to be community meetings. We needed to make sure that we are aligned with the council member, and the funding is there. We have the right leadership in place, and I'm very happy about that. In fact, I remember last June, it wasn't just, discussion back and forth, but rolling up our sleeves and thinking about the strategic approach. There are some numbers and timeline that I'll turn over to Director Perna Palantino to answer, but thank you for the question, but also thank you for your affirmation and getting those facts on the record, Councilmember Lozada.
Council President.
Chair recognizes Councilman Dr. Nina Mai.
So once again, I hear you. I just need a timeline. I need to get something from you that says this is the projected timeline, and these are the things we've done to expedite.
So can we do this, Aparna?
Yes.
Always good to see you, too.
Councilmember Ahmad, there's a few factors at play. We have gotten as far as we can. We've been moving. We haven't stopped at any point in the process. As the Health Commissioner mentioned, we've already put out an RFP for design. We do need funding that's in this year's budget to be able to make a commitment to any construction firm. We need to know how much money we have to be able to move both of those health centers forward. That being said,
I have a question, excuse me, point of information. So is there a budget commitment in this budget regarding the healthcare center?
Yes.
How much is it for?
30 million?
30 million? So is that a step in the right direction, correct, in terms of a firm coming in and actually starting the process?
Yes.
And if I can also clarify one thing, Councilmember, you brought up the historic site and the historic appeal, and I just want on the record that the historic appeal process finally on the Friends site ended last December of 2025. So we couldn't, even if we wanted to start building, until the group finished their appeal process all the way to where it needed to go, and we prevailed, we couldn't move forward anyway. So that just finished in December of 2025.
Thank you for that. And however, I'm just not going to accept that we can't be ready to hit the ground running when we can do a wellness center in 6 months. That's the comparison.
I want to be very clear, ma'am. We never, ever said that we weren't ready to hit the ground running, but we can't get ahead of ourselves. There is a process underway.
So can I do this?
Please do. I am not giving up on this.
Can the administration just provide the chair and the chair of the health committee and members of council just a timeline? We know we have the 30 million. From my understanding now, the lawsuit has moved forward, so there should be an aggressive.
We absolutely will commit to doing that.
An aggressive plan of action in terms of moving forward.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Chair recognizes council member, and I want to get my members on the record before we take a break. And so we're still in the first round. And so you have member Nicholas O'Rourke and Harity, and then we'll have Young is back on the floor, and we have Squilla. And then we'll go back into the next round, unless Driscoll would like to join. Oh, and Lozada, I'm sorry, I see you. Oh, yes, you're on there. I have you, absolutely. I see you right there. It did go off once you pressed the button, but everybody will get a chance to be in part of this first round, and then we'll go into the second round. Councilman Nicholas O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to Chief Thurman, Director DeBoe, and the mayor's team for being here to answer our questions and for your engagement prior to today as well. The disadvantage to being deep in the queue is that oftentimes in the crossfire of deliberation, what you want to talk about probably has been touched on. So please forgive me on the front end. If anything I'm about to say, mention, or ask sounds a bit repetitive, I do want to make sure that I get all of mine in the format that we've established it on the record. And also, a bit of what we've discussed today has to do with affordability, which I really deeply appreciate. Just want to name again that our team has been working diligently on our Affordable Philly Now initiative and have convened a cost of living task force for the Council of the City of Philadelphia. That City Council task force on cost of living is getting very close to putting forth a report with actionable policy ideas and recommendations to drive down the cost of living. We do look forward to working with the administration when the report comes out for implementation on those fronts. But, you know, in that same spirit, we are heading into a moment where the ground beneath our budget is shifting. The federal government is pulling back from the very programs that keep people afloat. At the same time, the cost of living is rising and folks are already stretched thin. So this isn't a normal budget year. The president use the term a stress test. This is a stress test. And a relevant question is whether we're preparing well for that reality or we're ignoring it for the sake of our citizens and for those for whom we're compelled to care for. Right now, thousands of Philadelphians are bracing for the loss of basic supports. And in some cases, they're already witnessing it, whether it be for healthcare, food assistance, as we talked about, education resources. And when those supports disappear, the pressure doesn't vanish. It lands here at the city level. We become the backstop. When the federal government pulls the floor out from under people, which they have already begun to do, the city has to be ready to catch them, or we're going to see people fall. So I'd like to start with a series of questions to understand the kind of position that we're in as a city. Do we know how many of those within our care that are at risk of losing Medicaid coverage due to new work requirements or cuts? Do we know how many of those within our care that are at risk of losing Affordable Care Act subsidies as they expire? How many Philadelphians have already lost SNAP benefits under the new work requirements, if that wasn't already asked? And do we have a plan to respond to the losses? And when I say plan specifically, do we have this is what we've decided on, here is the strategy as we've teased it out? I'll start there.
Call on up. Call on Rob DeBoe to answer the question.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about what we're doing financially, and then we'll get to the questions about the numbers of people. So there are a few things that are in this 5-year plan. One is our federal funding reserve. We're asking to reestablish at $91 million. We also have our budget stabilization reserve fund that gives us some reserve. That will give us planning time, and as we've talked about before, we don't have the capability to step in for more than $2 billion in grants that we receive. So from our perspective, it's really about giving ourselves time if the cuts really come to make sure we can take action. I'm going to turn it back to Vanessa for the details.
I don't have here, Councilman O'Rourke, the exact number of the cuts. We can try to get that for you, though, here. We are cognizant, and like I said before, we are trying very hard to make sure that we work with everybody so that we minimize or mitigate those cuts, and so that everybody who can be eligible is eligible, because a lot of it is about making sure that people know that they have to reapply, for example, or that they have to meet the requirements for work or for volunteering or that kind of stuff. And so we are maximizing those kinds of outreach and other work going on through our Department of CEO and other places. We are also trying to make sure that we are working with kids and families in particular around food insecurity. Some of that is coming under our community schools work and other things that we're doing in different departments. We are expanding what we can make available to these families and other things. But we will, I will commit to making sure we get you the numbers that you asked very particularly, because I don't want to quote you a number and it's not accurate.
Okay, thank you for that. I was going to ask about the.
Also for Medicaid, I'm sorry, Deputy Managing Director Crystal Yates Gale will come up and share some of those data points as well.
Okay.
Good morning, Council Member. For the Medicaid numbers, we anticipate 73,000 Philadelphians are at risk of losing coverage. What we've committed to do, we've opened up an RFP that closes very soon, I think Friday, where we're going to bring in a consultant to help us work with the One Philly strategy across all departments to minimize those losses, to include CEO, the Health Department, the Department of Behavioral Health, and the other HHS departments, DHS, and provide work requirements through some of our service providers, and also look at the financial impacts.
Okay. Thank you for that.
And then for additional cuts, I know Chief Deputy Mayor Garrett Harley mentioned CEO. We have here present with us today the Director of CEO, Orlando Rendon, and his colleague, his deputy, Beth McConnell, that can talk to further cuts, and then what mitigation factors we have in place through Benephilly, financial capacity, additional investments we've made into our website to ensure that everyday residents can go onto our website and learn about our financial capability tools. That's thanks in part to our OIT team under the leadership of Melissa Scott Walker. So I'll call on Orlando and Beth first to answer those, further answer those questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Orlando Rendon, Executive Director of Community Empowerment and Opportunity. Councilmember, to answer your questions in terms of numbers, I believe in terms of those who are potentially to lose Medicaid is around 73,000. And we're talking about in terms of SNAP, approximately 142 that have been identified that could potentially have a loss. And I'll leave it to Beth McConnell, Deputy Executive Director of Policy and Programs.
What was the SNAP number again, sorry?
I'm sorry, which one?
The SNAP number you just gave?
142,000 identified by DHS in terms of the agreement that we have identifying who is on SNAP, who would be in danger of losing.
And Beth McConnell, Deputy Executive Director, Policy and Programs at CEO. So on the 142,000 on SNAP, so that is a number of Philadelphians who are currently enrolled in SNAP that based on the work that we've done with our partners at IDEA and PADHS, that we think are at risk. Now, they won't necessarily all lose SNAP, but based on what we know about them, we think they're a high priority list that we should do proactive outreach to. And so we actually have a data sharing agreement with the state. We have contact information for those Philadelphians, and we are actively doing text messaging to them right now to connect them to our Benephilly program.
Can I get a point of information real quick in regards to that data and the work that I'm doing with Vanessa, and we can also loop Member Nicholas O'Rourke. and as part of that process with the Food Security Task Force regarding assistance in targeting those individuals to make sure they have what they need so they don't even get kicked off in the first place. And so the chair's floor is back to you, Mr.
Thank you for these responses. I appreciate it, and I think it's important that we name them, right, in the course of this budget process. And I know you understand this, but they're not just numbers. But sometimes putting those figures out there can focus us and provide some sobriety as we approach the kind of questions about what it means to fund in this particular climate. These are those within our care, these, citizens and those who we are obligated to care for and provide for. They're our neighbors, and these are people in every single district who are already on the edge. So I think it's about, it's my feeling that we should be able to understand exactly what this looks like, even district by district, if I can say. And these realities have to be front and center as we discuss the budget, because this is the pressure our residents are under right now. So that's the reason why I asked for those questions. I know that the data exists, but I think it helps. I think it enriches our discussion, our deliberations, and what we ultimately produce when that's forefront of our mind for all of us. I did hear the bell a couple of times. I wonder if I can continue on, or should I cut it now, Mr. President?
Briefly, sir.
Thank you, sir. I want to jump into something a little bit more charged. At the same time that we're talking about shrinking federal resources, we're also considering shrinking our own. That's a serious contradiction in my view. Every dollar that we give away in tax breaks is a dollar that we can't use to keep people housed, keep schools running, fill the gaps the federal government is leaving behind, et cetera. We do ourselves no favors by saying that we're bracing for cuts on one hand and voluntarily cutting our own revenue on the other. I raised this last year with my minority leader around the BERT cuts that she mentioned for corporations and big businesses, and that's why we introduced the People's Tax Plan in the first place, to propose a new revenue stream through a wealth tax, which I know is not a sexy term, but billionaires got the money, and I know that this administration seems to recognize that, and so I think that might be worth our looking at. So while we're expanding the small business exemption for Philly small businesses, so it's concerning to me that we're still talking about cutting revenues for the city during this moment, and that's why I have serious hesitations about the proposed 20-year tax abatement, if I can say. So the questions that I have, I'll put them on record, and I'll come back around in the next round for my other stuff. When should council expect to see a formal proposal for the 20-year tax abatement? When the proposal is released, do we know what metrics will be used to evaluate the abatement's economic impact, housing outcomes, and equity? How is the administration factoring federal funding uncertainty into its decision-making on the long-term tax policy? And has there been any analysis of how the proposal would impact the city's ability to respond to federal cuts over the next 5, 10, and 20 years? So those are my questions on that one. Like I said, I have some other stuff, but I'll wait for the second round.
Hello again.
Howdy.
So I can talk about the tax cut policy, and really we think of it as a tax investment policy, because we have seen studies that show that reducing wage tax, reducing the BERT, leads to increases in employment. So for us, that is a strategy about increasing employment, and that in the long term, it should increase our base rather than reducing it. So that's the theory behind that. On the 20-year abatement, should we ask John to come up?
Yes, I would like to call up John Monlek to talk about where things stand with the 20-year abatement. We hope to introduce legislation soon. We are in active and ongoing research looking at ensuring that things are in place from a legal perspective, working with the solicitor's office, as well as working with our union partners to ensure that there's synergy and alignment there, as well as other stakeholders. And so we want to make sure that when we offer or proffer the legislation, that we've done our due diligence first, and then, of course, look forward to that robust, process engaging council after we introduce the legislation. But I'll turn it over to our expert in-house on that to talk more specifically about what's currently underway.
Thank you very much. Before you begin, just want to make sure I clarify, I haven't 11 terms under my belt and expertise like you have, Mr. DeBoe. Did you say that that cutting BERT increases employment, and that's the strategy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. John Monlek, I'm a Deputy Director in the Department of Planning and Development.
And I think it was already stated that we are working through final issues to make sure that we have a good bill to transmit to council in the next couple of weeks. The plan is to meet with those interested prior to that so that there are no surprises.
Okay.
The incentive is, the reason we're doing it is to focus on what it's intended to do. If you're familiar with the state law that authorizes it, it allows for conversions to residential. So the reason that is the focus is because we have a number of municipal properties that are not being used right now, that need to be converted into something. Many of them would be great candidates for housing. Of all the housing that the city does, we will include a large component of affordability that we will share with you in advance before anything gets approved, because all of it will need to get approved by City Council because of real estate requirements in the Home Rule Charter. So there'll be lots of conversations about what we're doing. Those municipal properties combined with some long-term, historically vacant school district properties, which might also be good candidates for housing because many of them are
Point of
located.
information. Will inclusionary zoning be a part of that process or something that you take in consideration?
Inclusionary zoning cannot, my understanding from law is it cannot be built into that particular ordinance because it would be beyond the authority that was granted to us from the state. But that does not mean that council cannot include, we have inclusionary zoning in our zoning code today. We have a voluntary program, we have a mandatory program. Council has the ability to do that. So it can't be tied, but it can be done.
How do you guarantee a level of affordability? And I support the type of investment to make businesses want to come here and build, but I know we talk about development, and I live in Point Breeze, I've been around for a while. Sometimes that offset is the gentrifying of the actual area because the value goes up, somebody comes in and builds, which is great because we want to have development, right? But also we don't want to have unintended consequences in the surrounding area where we see property values go up, individuals won't have the opportunity to still stay inside the neighborhood because the taxes are going up, and we work with Rob for a variety of different tax relief measures to keep people here, but having foresight going into it, because I was around for the 10-year tax abatement before we phased it out, and I see there's a balancing act that has to take in place, but I also see in my neighborhood, like where there were schools, there are apartments now, just to be quite frank with you, and the people living in those apartments aren't indigenous to the neighborhood, and to be quite frank with you, it's not really diverse. Just being quite frank with you, some I was able to negotiate some level of affordability with, some of them individuals had by right to build as they saw fit. And so I just think going into this phase, if this is something we as a body will support, making sure we're taking in consideration those type of possible unintended consequences with an emphasis on still try to drive business growth and development. The chair recognizes Councilmember Nicholas O'Rourke.
You were finished.
Yeah, if I could
Yes, go ahead,
comment
sir.
on that. I mean, I have to say that I couldn't agree more. I think you summed up the challenges, the issues, and my response is that we will share. Like every project's a little bit different, there are different costs involved, but our goal is to get affordability into these. Workforce and affordability as much as we can, and we will present something to you that we think this works. And there might have to be subsidy in it, even if we have a 20-year abatement. We're prepared to understand that the abatement itself may not be enough. And in many cases, likely will not because affordability costs money in most cases. So we will present that with you, particularly the council district person that is where the property is, and it would be deed restricted and enforceable, and we would monitor every year like we do for the different programs that we currently have.
Nicholas O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, I had the 4 questions. I understand that we're about to enter into that discussion, I guess I gauge it, and we'll shape that, I guess, through deliberation. So you said briefly, thank you for the time. I'll come back with my other set of questions in the second round.
Thank you, sir. Chair has Councilmember Jim Harity, and then we'll have Young, and then Squilla will wrap us up, and then we will break. I'm sorry. Oh, you see the look she gave me? Councilmember Ketsi Lozada. And then we'll break. I see you, Member Lozada, right here. Councilmember Jim.
Thank you, Council President.
Glad we're keeping it right here. Martin Luther King said, those who are greatest among us are those who are up first. I guess they didn't like it. No? There you go, see? So, I want to start off by thanking you for your service. As a public servant, I know some of the trials and tribulations that you have to face every day, so I thank you for that. And shout out to my man, Carlton Williams, Clean and Green. I could just tell you, I call him on Sundays, picked right up. But that being said, you know, everybody knows I live on a small block in Kensington. And when you live on a small block, the good thing is that you get to know your neighbors and they get to know you. The bad thing is you get to know your neighbors and they get to know you. So, you know, I get it when I come home. They're waiting for me, and, you know, there was an announcement yesterday that, you know, sent some shivers down my block. And I want to start off by saying, first off, I am for anything that saves our teachers. We cannot afford to lose any of our teachers. As a matter of fact, I believe that, my plug, our teachers need a raise. That being said, though, we're about to implement this dollar tax, which is higher than Chicago at 15 cents and Massachusetts at 20 cents and even Seattle at 57 cents. This is just a short little bit of research. But what I'm really trying to get at is, are you taking into consideration, let's say, extenuating circumstances? So this was the dilemma I was faced with when I got home from work last night. My neighbor across the street who just moved in, family man, couple kids, doing the right thing, him and his wife, hard workers. They Uber to work every day because they don't have a vehicle, and where in the city they work, it's kind of hard, even with the L, to get to where they're at. So he was breaking it down to me. He Ubers his wife to work in the morning, right? Then him and his kids Uber to school so that he could drop off the kids. Then he Ubers back home. And then when his wife gets home, after she Ubers back home, he Ubers to work. And then in the morning, he Ubers back home again to Uber his kids to school. And I just want to make sure that we're taking in all those kind of factors. So just saying in the best case scenario that we are able to convince Uber and Lyft and them guys to split the cost with the consumer at 50-50, that would still mean that his family will be paying $3 a day extra. That's not counting the fact that we're about to start closing schools and his kids may have to go someplace that's further away that will cost more money automatically because they have no vehicles. So at that, you're talking now $90 a month, and that's what I would feel is probably the best case scenario if we can get Uber and Lyft and them to buy into this and do 50%. So I just want to know, are we taking into consideration things like that? Are we thinking about placing a minimum on how many times we could charge these poor people? You know, like you're talking, this poor guy is going to get hit 6 times a day. And again, if he has no other choice. I mean, if he did, he would make the cheaper cost of taking the public transportation, but it's just not feasible for where they have to go. I just want to make sure that when we're doing this and we're adding another tax, that somehow we think it's not going to affect low-income people. And just one neighbor across the street from me showed me how it's going to affect him big time. And again, you know, we got to do what we got to do to save these schools. But I'm just saying, are we taking into things like that? Can we set, like, you can only be charged so many times a week, the fee to kind of lessen it for, are we thinking like those kind of ways, different things that we could do to maybe lessen it a little bit more on people that are going to be paying multiple fees a day?
Hi, Councilman. Thank you for that question. I do understand what you're saying, and certainly the plight of that neighbor that you said is a little different. And to be honest with you, I never thought about anybody taking 6 Ubers a day. That's a little bit more extreme than I thought about. That does not mean that it doesn't happen or that I'm trivializing that, right? So that's something we might have to go back and see whether or not is taken into account. But I did need to clarify a couple of points. One is that the proposed tax that we're putting up, even at the $1, is less than our comparable cities. New York City is at $2.75. Chicago is at $1.13. I know I heard you quote a number for Chicago, but our information shows Chicago is at $1.13, and Washington, D.C. is at 6%. So their tax varies. It just depends on how much you spend. But all the comparable cities that we've been able to look at do have a tax in place, and it varies based on the jurisdiction that you go to, but it is embedded. Now, the other thing is that we by no means were implementing this tax trying to put it on the individual worker. These multi-million-dollar companies could certainly absorb this tax should they want to. So now the issue is whether or not we're going to hold those companies accountable so that they absorb it out of maybe some of the profits or other things that they're making. But it is no doubt that we have to do what we need to do to be able to support our kids in our current school district, right? We want to talk about economic mobility, well then schools are the foundation for that as the generations move forward, right? One of the things that we did take into account though, and we have the unions standing with us, those various school unions from the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, PFT, the School Police Officers Association, CASA, which is the union that has the principals and other administrators and the climate managers, as well as Unite Here. But what we did do, and considering in concession with that, some of these union members are folks that have said, similar to what you said, you know, maybe some of our members are using it. What we did was offer to expand, and we will use some of this funding for those qualified school district employees. We'll expand that SEPTA Key Advantage program to them so that their members who will now qualify for SEPTA Key Advantage can stop taking all those Ubers and be able to have, you know, their transportation paid for. That will also be a win for SEPTA because it will put, you know, additional funding into that SEPTA pocket as well. So we are trying to take into account what we can, but we do know that the loss of these positions, if we do not get this funding and can support the school district in some way, could potentially have some catastrophic effects on our young people. And so
Can I
our
have a
children
point of
are first
information
and
real quick?
foremost. Yes, sir.
That's if you don't mind. So the funding is going to the district for operational costs, right?
Yes,
But
sir.
also, out of the operational funding that's going to be used to make sure teachers and principals and resource staff aren't terminated, right? Or laid off.
Yes, sir.
But also money is going to be put aside to go toward the SEPTA Key program as well for individuals who may want to use SEPTA as an alternative to ride share. Is that correct, what I hear you saying?
For the membership that qualify, and so we're still setting the categories. Now, when we say qualify, you got to be a Philadelphia resident. If we're going to be using Philadelphia funds, we know some of the school district employees are not Philadelphia residents,
And is
right?
that
You have to be a
different?
resident, and there's going to be some income guidelines in there
Gotcha.
too.
And
So we're not talking about necessarily giving a trans pass to the
That's
principal
cool.
per se.
I'm just trying to get also the clarity on if that's the case, is that separate? Is that a third pot of money? Because we already have a commitment from the administration in your own budget to do zero fare, and SEPTA Key programs for city workers. Will this be a third pot of money that will be available as well for school staff that's in the unions that actually qualify? So it's 3 pots that we're talking about now. I just want to get clarity on.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I want to say.
Yeah, the tax would generate $192 million for the district to restore operations, and then this transit funding would be $3 million a year that would also come out of the tax proceeds.
Chair recognizes Councilman Jim Harity.
That's, I get it. I'm a union guy. I'm for, like I said, giving our teachers a raise, treating them the way they're supposed to be treated, along with all the other people who are servicing and taking care of our children every day. All I'm trying to get at, and I wasn't trying to be offensive, is that while we're doing this, we should be thinking about those individuals who do have to take multiple a day. I was a union laborer before I went back to work for Senator Street. For 10 years, I was out there. And when I first got started, I didn't have a vehicle. I can tell you it's very hard to get from Philadelphia to another destination at 6 o'clock in the morning to be on a job for 6 or 7 o'clock when we're working early. So I know that sometimes you have no choice. You have to take that Uber. I just hope that when we're doing all these figures that we're figuring on that too, because putting it on multiple times a day and a week on somebody is, you know, listen, I can understand if they were using the Uber as a luxury to travel here, there, maybe there's some way that we can have some paperwork where we can show proof or something that would give them a break. That's what I'm trying to say. Just any way that if we have to do this, that we could also make sure that we're also thinking about those individuals who are already on tight budgets. Like they have the Uber rides that they have right now worked into their budget, and they're doing okay with it.
And that's the message from Councilmember Harity to Uber, from Councilmember Harity to those companies to say, don't pass it on to your workers.
Listen, I'm cool.
We
You know
agree
me. I'm
with you.
cool with that.
We absolutely
Do you
agree
have
with
a
you.
way that I can do it? You tell me how to do
That's
it, and I'll make sure
exactly-
they do it. That's for sure.
Exactly what's happening now. Yes, sir. We're saying,
I love a good challenge.
absolutely, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Member Harity.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you all.
Thank
Again
you,
for
sir.
your service.
We'll deal with this as we need to deal with it, but I think most companies do, like most industries, and just being frank and transparent, they won't pass it along. Rather, we do something regarding the landlord, rental folks, they just pass it along. When we do property assessments and people get an increase, they just pass it along. But we're willing to work to figure out whatever ways to kind of, you know, make sure there's a blunt, because it's not directly on them, but
And
we
we're
know
not
most people-
naive to that, but that doesn't mean we're going to just settle
Yeah,
for
try
it
to
either.
figure out a way to address it.
Absolutely, sir.
Member Harity?
Yeah, I'm good. That's all I was just.
Okay,
wanted to
let's
make
get
sure.
these last three in so
No,
we can
yeah.
wrap up. You're gonna have,
So,
the
whatever.
chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying, like, we need to be thinking of like a maximum charge. Like, this is how many times you can actually be charged this fee.
Like a cap?
Right.
Is that legal?
That's I couldn't come
Is
up
a
with
cap
that.
legal, Mr. DeBoe? I mean, I don't know, this is a new territory for us.
So we are working with our law department, and certainly we'll take into account the recommendations and the feedback from Councilman Harity, as well as you, Council President, as we consider this moving forward.
Thank you. I was just asked that question in the neighborhood. Is there any way that this don't impact me directly and it could only just impact the industry? And I just explained to my constituent that most of the time, most industries, you know, even if it's not us directly, they'll figure out a way to try to meet their bottom line. But if we could be strategic and think about outside the box what legally we can do, I think that'll go a long way to the consumers as well, similar to what the people Mr. Harity is talking about. The chair recognizes Councilmember Ketty Lazada, Jay Young, and Councilmember Mark Squilla. I
Thank
want no smoke.
Thank you, Council President. I didn't do anything. I'm not giving her smoke. Thank you also for being here this morning. My colleagues asked some of the questions that I had around the home initiative and around land bank, but I read in your submitted remarks that there's a 5-year plan that proposes $151 million in new housing investments, including a new land bank support. What does that mean? What does that entail?
Yes, I'll call on Angel Rodriguez, who oversees the land bank, to answer that question. Also coming up is Angela Brooks, who oversees the home initiative.
I know.
We'll start with Angela and then turn it over to Angel Rodriguez.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Angela Brookscan, Chief Housing and Urban Development Officer for the Mayor's Office. And first, thank you, Councilmember Lozada, for the question. As you know, we finished an organizational assessment for the land bank late last year that we're still finalizing, and a lot of that assessment pointed out a lot of technology needs and staffing needs that would help right-size the work that the land bank is doing. So a lot of the funding that we're asking for in this budget will be around that, and Angel can talk to a lot of the rest of the things in your question.
Angel Rodriguez, Executive Director of the Philadelphia Land Bank. So in this budget, the land bank would be funded at $6 million. That's an increase of $3 million from what it typically gets. Usually from, I would say, 2022 to 26, we've been level funded at $3 million. We have been struggling and we've had an operational deficit. This new budget with $6 million, 4.5 will be for day-to-day operations, so that will actually erase that operating deficit, and then 1.5 million will be for acquisitions for this fiscal year. That'll be coupled with the $4 million that has been identified in home for acquisitions through sheriff sales. With that, we've been hiring. So we filled 6 new positions. I have recently hired a real estate director, senior attorney. We're still looking for the appropriate person. As many of you have worked with our current senior attorney, Andrea Sa, she is retiring. So we are looking to fill that position so we can ease that transition. Also, senior development specialists we have hired. Development specialists, and we are in the process of hiring a paralegal. At this point, we're also working with a technology consultant, and at this point, we have a database, Salesforce, which we use for Turn the Key, which works very well with first-time home buyers and helping them with their application. We're expanding that for land applications so that a lot of the issues in terms of transparency, reporting, quicker response times. Also, it'll allow applicants to track their application to see what pieces they're missing. Also, if they are not successful in getting a qualified application, what that reason was, and then it'll be an automated process, drastically reducing timelines, and also we'll be able to report on that. They'll be able to understand, specifically what the deficiencies were in their application or why they were successful. So.
Is any of that process going to, I hear you mention Turn the Key and system updates. Is any of that going to help better respond or track applications related to side yards and gardens?
That's going to be for all applications. So we just had I had a meeting this week what we started with was side yards. That's our most prevalent application that we deal with. So we're already building out a system. I would say that one of the benefits of the operational assessment is that the consultants had actually mapped out every decision point, and that translated very well to meet with our website engineers. So we've already had that conversation today. We'll be going to garden groups and the land applications. So that work is already started. We should have a beta site, hopefully by May or June, so that we'll be able to work it out and test it. And then I'm really excited to see that this calendar year we'll be able to roll it out.
We requested, I think it was last year, a report of all land that was disposed of to anybody, and
Correct.
what kind of land. Where are we as it relates to receiving that report?
So my understanding was when you passed that bill that it was supposed to be the end of the fiscal year, and we will be able to turn that over to to council as of June 30th. So we do track all of our response, dispositions, so we'll be able to do that.
Thank you.
And I would also like to just add, in the spirit of all of the transparency, and I think we've talked a lot about Philly Stat 360, all of this information will live there as well. So we are working on making sure that we're getting them data quarterly for all of the home-funded initiatives. So you'll see a lot more of that data being processed in a more consistent basis and on a quarterly basis, as well as the report that we have to give to council as a part of the home bond bill that requires a quarterly report. So you'll be getting a lot of feedback over the next few months as required. So, and we're excited to be able to provide that information.
Thank you. According to the proposed plan, there's efforts around ending homelessness, and we talk about a hotel tax. Is all of the revenue that is going to be generated from that hotel tax solely going to be allocated to those homelessness efforts? And is any portion of that revenue going to be directed to supporting the local nonprofits that are actively doing the on-the-ground work in the community? I know that in the past, some of these nonprofits who do the really important day-to-day work have not gotten invoices paid on time. And at times, we've been told that it is as a result of glitches in the system. Is any of this revenue going to be allocated to updating our systems and to specifically support the work of some of those providers?
Yeah, the money all will go to homeless initiatives. It's going into the hotel tax fund, and it'll be specifically designated for these initiatives, so it's not going into our general fund. In terms of getting our contractors paid, we've done a lot of work on that, both in terms of getting contracts conformed more quickly, because that was often the issue, was contracts weren't conformed. So we've worked to make sure that happens more quickly, and we've accelerated our payment process too. So we're doing that now.
How many contracts do we have that are still not conformed? Because I know that the last time we were here, we talked a lot about conforming contracts, and we set a goal for ourselves. Where are we on conforming contracts?
Well, let's get back to you with what the goal was, what our conformance rate is, and the progress we've made. So we'll get back to you with a written response on that.
Thank you very much. Councilman Young, then Councilmember Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the members of the administration for being here today. I know how hard you work. I know we try to do our job in holding the administration accountable. We know you all do the work of the people, so I want to thank you as well. One comment I have first and then question is, Councilmember Harity, talked a lot about the proposed rideshare tax and the impact that it'll have. But I want to talk about it in numbers, right? So we are asking the citizens of Philadelphia to raise an additional $48 million that is only equivalent to about 1% of the total school district budget. And so when you put that on the backs of Philadelphians, like that 1%, we're never going to really realize that and feel what that 1% gets us when it comes to the school district and putting that money into an entity that has a $300 million structural deficit, which meaning that there are some things internally that just aren't connecting there. So we're asking taxpayers to shove out an additional $48 million to an entity that each seems like every year is coming back to us for asking for more and more and more money. What I'd say is a place where we can clearly see where our money is going to that has a greater impact is similar to the soda tax, right? That averages about $70 million a year, and we can clearly see the impact that has on our communities. Why not use that money to help support those additional early learning centers, with those folks who we desperately need to give raises to, we desperately need to want to see what the impact of this money on the school district of Philadelphia, and we're asking to just give them 1% of their budget. And so I just want to ask clearly, like, what can we as Philadelphians really expect to see and feel from this 1% increase in the school district's budget?
240 jobs saved. That's what you can see. 240 jobs saved. That's what you can see. That's a real number. Those are real people, and those are real results. And while that doesn't fix the structural deficit, and it doesn't in any way fix the structural deficit, it does save 240 jobs, and that's important to us. It also helps to empower leaders like Chairman Harris when he is in Harrisburg standing alongside of his colleagues on both sides of the aisle to say, this is what Philadelphia did. This is what Philadelphia is doing. Now let's do our part to fix the actual structural deficit. So we don't have the means to solve the problem altogether, but we do have the means, not by putting it on the backs of the people, but by asking the corporation to do the right thing, not pass it on to the consumer, but in their general fund and their operating costs, and thereby saving 240 jobs. That's the real impact to it.
Yeah,
I'll turn it over
I just think that
Rob
we'll have
DeVoe.
a greater impact putting that money elsewhere than the school district of Philadelphia with, again, I've always said that this budget is larger than the size of many cities in this country, right? And so that's not really going to have, to me, right, it's going to have an impact on those specific entities, right, those specific 240 people, if you want to ensure that they can get, that they are working. But I do think if we rework how we budget for our school district, we can find 1%. I really think we can do that. And so I'll leave that there. My next question is regarding, how the city budgets. From the 5-year plan, it says that, of course, we have a historically high fund balance, but we face financial challenges and economic uncertainty, more financial challenges and greater federal and economic uncertainties than in recent years. So in knowing that, why do we still project to only keep a 6 to 8% fund balance when it's recommended to have, almost double of that? And when we have this uncertainty that is coming in the future? Yeah, there are a couple of things going on. Let me talk about kind of the things that are really driving the reduction in fund balance. There are two big things. One is the federal funding money going away, which is about a $400 million reduction in our revenues. And we are seeing a big increase in employee benefit costs from FY25 to FY27. They're going up about $200 million. So between those two things, that's $600 million a year that is a hit to our budget. So that's kind of what's driving the reduction in our fund balance. But at the same time, knowing that we need to have contingency, we are building up the rainy day fund that gets to its largest amount ever, so that gets to $340 million, and reestablishing the Federal Reserve policy. It is all a trade-off between, maintaining and expanding essential services and where our fund balance is. And so we like to kind of make sure we're at least at that 6% while also providing services that Philadelphians need and deserve. I mean, I know this is a practice of ours. I'm just, again, still concerned with uncertainty, right? I mean, we're on the brink of war, right? And so to have this lower amount in our reserves, I mean, it just, kind of bothers me to know that, we're still dealing with a few more years of the Trump administration and not understanding, right, what's coming and not coming to Philadelphia. So I think that we should be a little bit more prudent when it comes to budgeting locally because we just don't know. And Councilmember, I think that is a real concern, and I think it's a really legitimate concern. And for us, it's just the trade-off between the services we need to provide and that fund balance. But hear you and agree with the concern. Thank you. And the administration points to prior tax changes and continued reductions to the wage and business taxes as part of the growth strategy. What evidence do you have so far that these tax changes are producing real neighborhood-level benefits such as business formation, corridor strength, job creation, employee retention? Like, what's showing that these taxes are actually, reduction in taxes are actually producing the outcomes that we are hoping that they produce?
There are a couple of things. There have been multiple studies over time that show that there's a link between where those taxes are and job creation. So that we look to those, and then we hear it from businesses all the time that, for them to stay in Philadelphia and create jobs, they want to see that commitment to lowering taxes.
So,
excuse me, just for the record, point of information, Rob. Could you just provide for the chair and the members of council what these studies look like?
Yes.
Just for the record, so we can just have it for common knowledge, that's all.
We will do that, yep.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was my next question. I want to ask a question about the capital budget. In this capital budget, again, it's something I've been talked about before. Our art museum has about $2 million in capital expenditures, capital funds over the 6-year period. Our total for our libraries is about 6.5 per year over this period. We have 54 libraries in our city. We have 1 art museum. Can we talk about the discrepancy, knowing that we have these issues? I understand that there's going to be $1 million put into HVAC. I can tell you that that's not enough for even 1 library. So can we talk about why we have these discrepancies in providing, those amounts for cultural institutions like the art museum, but there seems to be an imbalance in providing for capital funds for our cultural institutions like the Free Library of Philadelphia?
Sure, so I will call on Aparna Palantino. We're actually making a record number of investments into our libraries this fiscal year. So she'll talk through those numbers, but excited about what we've proffered.
So I'm asking to speak to the disparity between the art museum getting $2 million, right? And then you have our library system as a whole getting, with 54 buildings, $6.5 million.
Okay, we got.
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Young. So in terms of libraries, they are allocated about $5.5 million this year.
Okay,
as
5.5.
As you mentioned. We plan to, as you know, HVAC systems are one of the key issues plaguing libraries, so that will enable us to do about 8 to 10 branches a year, depending on the size. And roofs are another issue that are consistently a problem, so we have evaluated the projects. We also continue to do assessments for the libraries annually so that we have a comprehensive view of what each facility needs rather than going in piecemealing projects. That also gives us a more cost-effective approach when we address the buildings.
So I guess my question is, what's the rationale and thinking behind providing the libraries with X dollars versus providing the art museum and other cultural institutions those dollars? Like, and how is that determined? How is it determined that the Police Touch Museum gets X, the Barnes gets nothing? How does that get determined essentially?
It's based on need at the time, and also it's based on our overall commitment to our cultural institutions. So even and institutions even beyond the art museum, including new investments that we're making into the Dell. I'll call on Val Gay to talk about those investments in our cultural institutions and the allocations beyond the library, which Aparna just discussed.
Good afternoon. I'm Val Gay, Chief Cultural Officer. Thank you. And so, I left my notes.
As she's going back to get her notes and coming back, I know that when Mayor Parker was giving her budget address, she talked about doing, for the first time ever, under Val Gay's leadership, a cultural master plan. And as a part of that cultural master plan, we will be looking at facility investments that we make to all of our cultural institutions, including those that serve, of course, our children throughout the city of Philadelphia. But I'll turn it back over to Val Gay.
Sure, thank you so much. So, Councilmember Young, regarding making investments into cultural institutions, so when we talk about the Dell, and certainly Commissioner Susan Slauson can talk about the Dell and our other cultural institutions, we are looking at how do we right size? So your question is really interesting around the need initially, and also how do we look at historical experiences. So for example, to your point, you brought up the barns, for example. We know that when the barns came onto the Parkway, there were a series of, about 15 years ago, a series of relationships that were built, and it was determined that the barns would not necessarily receive funding from the city. We have been working under your leadership with the barns to think about how we can move funding to the barns. In terms of the art museum, the importance of the art museum, like our libraries, is that it is not only just an institution for Philadelphia, it is in fact an international destination, and there have been long-standing funding for the Capitol that has not been addressed. I cannot speak to all of the individual issues around who receives what funding and when, but I can talk about, as Chief Thurman just spoke about the Cultural Master Plan, that for the first time, we will have the opportunity to look at every neighborhood, every cultural institution, including those in every district that don't heretofore have the same level of funding, whose voices perhaps have not fully been at the table. And so as we look at our funding, as we look at the excitement around things like the Cultural Master Plan, our approach in Creative Philadelphia is not about one over the other, but how do we make sure that we reach as many as possible, starting from, in our perspective, a negative position.
Thank you. I would hope that the cultural institutions that are on city-owned land get prioritized, like the barns, like Eastern State Penitentiary,
Yes.
which is a city-owned land, right? It's not in this budget, right? So I would hope that we can include those in the plan and also in the budget to get some necessary capital improvements. But another last question I have on this round, Mr. President, is regarding capital projects in general. So we know that this budget can never fully meet the documented capital needs. What is the total documented unmet capital needs citywide, and how did the administration decide which needs made the cut, which needs did not, and how we work through that process?
Councilmember Young, for that specific response, we'll have to get back to you because there's several departments that have capital budgets, so we will have to accumulate that information and get it. And I just wanted to offer one point of information for the libraries. For your earlier question, we've completed about $48.7 million worth of work last year, and we have in progress about $30 million worth of projects across about 12 to 15 libraries. So for that reason, this year's ask was a little bit lower as we continue to do those projects. So that number can fluctuate in the future.
I just think that the need is great. We shouldn't lower those funds. We should be increasing. The need is always there for our library system. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Councilmember Mark Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm not going to thank you all because you've been thanked a million times. But I'll be real quick, too, because I know everybody's ready to get something to eat. The question is on crossing guards and some of the openings that we have across the city for the schools. I know there's been classes ongoing, but it still seems like we can't fill the gap. Is there a number of openings that are there, and what is our goal to fill them?
So I'll call on
I'll call on the Candy Jones, the head of HR. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, Candy Jones again, Chief Human Resources Officer. So right now, we are looking at, we have about 150 vacancies for school crossing guard. We have managed, through significant recruitment and partnerships with our departments, bringing that number down from 400. So we are continuing to make progress. We're certainly not satisfied with 150 vacancies, but we continue to move the needle. I can't speak to specific things in the departments that they're doing, but OHR has been partnering to recruit and then bring that vacancy down.
Do we have, do you know if we have ongoing classes scheduled? I know there's one in May, there's one now that just started. I think there's one in April. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mike Carroll, Deputy Managing Director for Office of Transportation and Infrastructure. So yes, there are ongoing classes. I believe there is one for April coming up. I just want to also share with you that we're almost back at the numbers that we hit the last year. And that was the peak that we've had since we restructured the program, so we're almost at 800. And we've also increased the number of supervisors. So a big part of what makes this effective is building the whole structure, the whole hierarchy. And that number is now at 13, and that's the highest we've had since we made the change as well. We're up from 9 to 13 supervisors, so we're growing the program.
We have also, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
We have also increased the compensation for those roles as well, and so that is also a part of the recruitment strategy as we move forward.
And as far as, I know it's under the Streets Department now, right? But it's still, we have requests that come from police, from schools, from neighbors, and everywhere else. Is there a priority list that you have that's set up so that when these schools that have long periods of time without a crossing guard, how they get filled? And I know when people are hired, they probably want to go to certain areas. And how do you then work with those folks to move into the vacancies that are still out there?
Yeah, so we make every effort to prioritize locations with more traffic and more history of traffic crashes and more exposure in general for the students involved.
All right, and listen, you have done a great job. I remember having this conversation a couple years ago when we were at 400. So it has done a great job down to 150, but the schools that still don't have them are the ones that still feel like nothing has changed. So hopefully the goal would be by the end of this year to try to fill the 150 outstanding positions and be able to replace the ones that are leaving, because do those folks also, do we know when they're retiring, or do they join the drop program?
Yeah, we try and keep track in terms of succession, like you're saying, of who's leaving. Sometimes people leave because they find another opportunity, though, or there's a point where there's changes in their life. We can't really predict that, but as far as the predictable stuff, we do try and keep on top of it.
The Office of Human Resources, we also track separations. We can share that information so that you can get an idea of kind of how many are leaving year over year and what we're seeing as well.
I was just going to say that if we could share that with the chair, and also share I guess the process to fill in the current openings of 150, and how long do you think would be before we don't finally get up to our complement? Thank you, Mr. President.
Point of information, Chair recognizes Council Member Jeffrey J. Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's along the same lines along the crossing guards. For our applications for that, are they rolling, or do you close them? Is it possible to keep it on a rolling basis to allow more people to apply year-round while we have these vacancies in other departments as well?
Yes, so there's a rolling application, but you do need to go through a process, and so we form cohorts that go through the process. So it's not like we're adding them one at a time throughout the course of the year.
To your question, though, the advertisement period is continuous, and so there's always posted. We're in constant recruitment for the role. Sure.
That's it, Member Young? Okay, thank you very much. We will stand in recess until 2:45.